And then I'd change positions on the bike and I'd be like, oh, it's really useful that this person's here right now pedaling for me. I realized that at least temporarily, I had 3 personalities going on. Like there were 3 versions of me.
Welcome to the Endurance Studio podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Turner. I'm an avid ultra-endurance cyclist, bikepacker, and runner, and I'm on a journey to learn and share everything I can about how people can push beyond their limits. This podcast will explore all aspects of endurance through conversations with people I find unique and interesting. There's always an amazing story of accomplishment and failure, and always something to learn. I run this podcast from an off-grid mobile studio I've created so I can travel to the guests and have authentic, in-person conversations because I believe in the importance and power of face-to-face conversations. This costs money to run, and you can support this podcast by becoming a sustaining member, liking, subscribing, commenting, and most importantly, sharing with your friends and family. If you're interested in advertising on the podcast, please contact me at theendurancestudio@gmail.com. Thank you for watching and listening. I wanted to let you know a few different ways that you can support this podcast. Of course, you can like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Tell other people about it. Tell your friends and family. If you think these conversations I'm having are valuable as I think they are, share it. Send it out. Ask them to subscribe. That would be amazing. That's a free way that you can support. Another way you can support is by financially support is by becoming a member on either YouTube or Spotify. Those links are always in the description of all the videos. And YouTube members do get some extra perks like member shoutouts during the podcast, priority reply to comments, and best of all, you get early access to new videos that I'm releasing. You can also, if you don't want to sign up for a recurring membership, you can also show me your support by sending a one-time gift using what YouTube calls the Super Thanks feature. So when you're watching a video, down at the bottom, there's the little buttons, the thumbs up, thumbs down button. And right next to that, there is a heart with a little dollar sign in the middle, and it says thanks next to it. That is the Super Thanks button. So if you click that, it'll allow you to give a one-time gift, financial gift of your choice. And it's just incredible. Like seeing the support that I've gotten so far from both members and from Super Thanks is just amazing, and it is definitely allowing me to keep this thing rolling down the tracks. I want to give a quick shout out to the newest YouTube member, Paul Kuzdas. Thank you, Paul. Great finish on Pinyons and Pines. And quick shout out to my newest YouTube members, Blake Bacchius. You're the OG, man. Thank you. And also to JB Holtz. 1 million thank yous to you for becoming a member. And lastly, Mike Simons for giving a very, very generous super thanks. So thank you. I am humbled by all of your support. I'd like to give a quick few minutes mention of a few products and companies that I love using and I just can't stop talking about. The first one is Squirrel's Nut Butter. They make adventure lube, some of the best adventure lube in the business. I use their saddle butter for riding and bikepacking. It has been a complete game changer in my ability to cycle further and farther without getting saddle sores. And I've also used their anti-chafe for running, different running events that I've done. It's just incredible stuff. It's all natural, sustainable packaging, amazing people, manufactured in Flagstaff. The whole story just feels good. If you haven't had a chance, check out the episode I did with Chris Thornley. He is the owner and operator of Squirrel's Nut Butter, and he's an amazing guy and just has an amazing backstory as well. So I do have a new coupon code for you, 15% off any products online. That code is Endurance15, ENDURANCE 15 for 15% off. There's also a link in the description below that'll automatically apply that coupon code to your shopping cart. So please use the code. It'll let them know that their support of this podcast is paying off for them. So, and just buy the product. It's incredible stuff. So go check it out. squirrelsnutbutter.com. And another company I'd like to mention quickly is Catula, another local Flagstaff company. They make shoe gaiters, shoe traction, and crampons. I particularly like their shoe gaiters and shoe traction. I use the gaiters for bike packing. So keep all the debris out of my shoes with all that hike-a-bike, and use the shoe traction for my wintertime running activities here in Flagstaff when it's icy. I also did a podcast with Chris Bunch. Go check it out. He's one of the product engineers behind the shoe traction, and it just like completely blew my mind how cool some of that engineering stuff is. Some of the thought that went into the design on those products that make them different than, say, knockoff products that you could buy on Amazon. So go check them out, Catula.com. And the last product company I'd like to mention is Dispersed Bikepacking Gear. Andrew and Katie Stremke are amazing human beings. They engineer, design, and sew some of the best bikepacking bags in the business. So go check them out. They sew them out of their van. They have a little workshop now. They're expanding, so it's great to see that. Disperse.bike is their website. If I'm gonna buy, I've said it before, I'll say it again. If I'm gonna buy bikepacking bags, I'm gonna do it from someone who's completed the Triple Crown race, which is the Colorado Trail Race, Arizona Trail Race, and Tour Divide, because those bags have been through the ringer. So he knows how to make a good bag. So go check him out. Today's guest is a math professor, race director of Pinyons and Pines, and he just set the FKT, or fastest known time, for the Race Across Arizona, a 616-mile gravel route across the state of Arizona, which starts on the western border in Topock and ends on the eastern border in Alpine, and has a cumulative gain of 66,000 feet. This is his second time on the podcast, and I'd like to welcome back to the podcast my adopted big brother, Dana Ernst.
That's when I was in college at George Mason. The dining hall had like a MTV box. I don't know what else to call it. It was just like this, like, it looked like an arcade machine, but it would play like music videos. And that was when, this would have been 94, 95, and Henry Rollins' band, like I'm a Liar song came out, and like every time I was in the dining hall that song was on. It was just the weirdest thing to be eating meals to. I'm a liar. Yeah, I saw Henry Rollins do this spoken word tour twice. Have you seen him before?
Oh, no, I've heard about that. Good?
So good.
Yeah?
Yeah, he's hysterical.
Yeah, he's an actor. He's been in a few movies.
Yeah.
Was doing the speaking tours.
I'd like to see him. I think he'd be more timely now than he was then. He's kind of ahead of his time.
Really?
He was kind of pushing the envelope for what you could maybe say about people, I think.
So what kind of topics would he talk about on the speaking tour?
This wasn't a major theme, but I do remember making fun of the Pope at the time. And the only reason why I remember that is because I was there with my buddy Dave, who was Catholic, and he was very, very offended. So that stands out to me, but I can't remember what else he was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw him twice. Once in the mid 90s and maybe once late 90s in DC, which is where he's from. I think he's from DC.
Those were the speaking tours.
Yeah.
So he's been doing that a long time, because he's still doing it, I think.
Yeah. Spoken word tours. Yeah.
Yeah. Spoken word tours. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it.
I'm ready.
Congratulations.
Hey, thanks, dude.
You set the FKT.
I guess so.
Yeah, you did. It's true. I checked on the website. Your picture's on the website.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I went to go look to see what, do some time comparisons just to sort of kind of get some stuff in my head beforehand.
Yeah. So you set the FKT on the Race Across Arizona, 2 days, 19 hours, and 53 minutes.
42 minutes.
42 minutes.
I think
Okay.
that was just the ping on track leaders.
I see.
Is what Craig used.
And that would be, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours ahead of the previous FKT set by Dirty Dan.
Dirty Dan. So on azgravelrides.com, I think is what the website is. I think Dirty Dan's time is listed at 71 hours, but that's also probably also from track leader. So I think he went a little bit faster than that, but let's say it was 71. So then I think I beat his time by 3 hours and 18 minutes.
Okay.
So 3 hours and some change.
So before we get into like kind of the nuts and bolts of your experience on it, I wanted to back up and maybe recap a little bit your plan leading into it. We talked a little bit about it on the Verde Valley Randonnée pod, kind of as that was like a training run.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, can you talk a little bit about your training leading into it, what your goals were for it, maybe how you felt when Dirty Dan set the FKT just a few weeks before your attempt, and your nutrition plan too going into it.
Okay. Yeah. So I think Craig developed the route 3 or 4 years ago. I helped out a little bit in helping him pick some roads around Flagstaff. So I've wanted to do it since its inception, but the timing is atrocious. It's always like during finals week, and I could just never sneak away. And so every year I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. And then I'd be like, oh, there's no way I can make that work. And so this year, I decided I would just try and squeeze in an individual time trial sometime around after the semester ended and when I leave to go visit my mom in Buffalo. And so I was kind of flexible on the date, which was helpful, although I wasn't as flexible as I thought it was, because as things started sort of like graduation parties and things like that started filling in, it was really, really only one window. So I was grateful it worked out. So I've wanted to do it for a few years, and I was pretty psyched that I was kind of able to make it work. I had decided probably in December that that's what I was going to do. And so then I decided to take it pretty seriously and got a coach, using Dave Harris, and started training officially in January, and with my eye exactly on sort of peaking for race/ride across Arizona. So I was taking it pretty seriously, mostly because I wanted to have a sort of goal in mind, and I really like having structured training, although I also hate it at the same time. I like it in the beginning, and after a while it kind of wears on me. I already don't ride with people all that much, and so when you have structured training program, it makes it a lot more difficult to sort of find time to sort of ride with other people. So I think I rode with you 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And I rode with my buddy Courtney once, and I think that's it.
Like
I rode with Joe Pavlik a couple times too.
Big days though.
Bigger days, like when it was like I could kind of tell people, oh, I'm going to go out for a few hours or several hours and do some longer rides.
Yeah.
So I kind of kept waffling over the months leading up to it, like what my goals were. I wanted to be fit so that I could go and have a better chance of finishing it and enjoy it. And sometimes in my mind, I wanted to go as fast as I possibly could and maybe shoot for the FKT, which at the time leading up to the training was set by Dexter Copus. It was 3 days and 9 hours. So sometimes I had that in mind and I thought I wanted to break that. And other times I thought I just want to ride it and sleep at night and then go as fast as I can during the day and see as much of Arizona as I could. I mean, I was familiar with probably the middle 200 miles of the course, but the beginning and the end were going to be brand new to me, and I didn't want to ride that part in the dark. So I kind of waffled. I never really committed one way or the other about what I was going to do. And then during the Grand Depart for the event, which happens, I think it was on May 6th. I might be totally wrong about that. There was a small group, and Dirty Dan went out and took 10 hours off Dexter's time. And I thought, holy shit, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I can't do that. So I immediately had a lot of doubt about what I could pull off. And I also was angry because I was like, oh, fuck, he didn't hardly sleep. And I don't want to do that. I'm getting too old for this shit. And I just felt kind of defeated. And for a little while I was thinking, I'm just going to just go have fun.
I saw you in the depths of that. Yeah. When we saw each other at Cocodona, and you were like going through this, like, I don't know if you're like, there's no way I could do this. Like,
yeah.
No way I don't, or do I want to do this? Maybe you could do it, but
I mean, it's all academic, right? You look at the paper and you think, oh, I think I'm capable of this, but really you don't really know.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It's easy to believe you're capable or not capable of pulling something off, but it's like, until you really get out there and sort of see how things shake out, you really don't know. And so I had for months been thinking about Dexter's time and not really like studying it formally, but that's kind of what I had in my mind. And I thought, yeah, okay, maybe that's reasonable. But again, I had no idea.
You just kept talking about Dan's stopping time.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell?
You were like, how is that even possible?
So I originally thought he didn't sleep the first night, but it turns out that he did. But not for very long. Maybe less than 2 hours. Still, I was thinking it's time. I'm not really interested in doing that. No, I ended up not sleeping very much at all. But leading up to it, I was kind of angry that I was even thinking about not sleeping or sleeping very little and trying to push to do that, because I was like, who the hell do I think I am? I'm a 49-year-old, average, large cyclist. I got no business thinking about doing that. I should just go out there and have fun. I've got a window of opportunity. My body's feeling pretty decent despite all my ailments. I should just go and not destroy myself. But then, like 2 days before, I was like, don't be such a wuss, fucking go for it. And there were a few little things that kind of spurred me along. Pinyons and Pines was in the middle of happening. So I had like some FOMO, right? And I'm watching people out there pushing themselves through things. So I think that was like my own little Private Rocky movie, right? Kind of inspired me to like think, oh, okay, I can do this. So there was that. My buddy Bill has had this like crazy health thing going on for the last, several months. And he's battled back through, pretty serious adversity. And I was like, yeah, fuck it. I want to like go out there and honor him by, also just pushing through this.
Yeah.
So that was inspirational. And then my son's gone through a lot of health stuff the last few months. And so that also is sort of on my mind also, sort of thinking about rising to a challenge. And mostly I thought what would happen is I was just going to go for it and I wasn't going to be able to do it. And then I was going to have to deal with not being able to achieve it. And that's kind of in a lot of ways what I was looking forward to, is like going for it, giving it my all, not being able to pull it off, and then continuing to try anyway and just be okay with falling short. Like it's kind of what I expected. And that's what I was preparing for, and kind of the kind of a mental, emotional challenge that I was prepared to deal with, and kind of looking forward to like, what's it going to be like for me to try and do this thing and not have it work out, and then have to sort of deal with it, failing, so to speak. Turned out okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, numerically.
Yeah. Did that give you a little bit of relief that you were kind of going in knowing it wasn't, like, you didn't think it was attainable?
Yeah, I was kind of willing. I mean, I certainly I was all over the map in terms of my emotions and my mentality about the whole thing, but generally speaking, I feel like I was mostly okay with whatever the outcome was going to be.
Yeah.
Even if that meant my body fell apart, I've got enough things that are like, feel like they're just stitched together and barely hanging on, that like, maybe my wrist was going to crap out and I wasn't going to be able to go, or my foot, which I was actually the most anxious about going into the whole thing, because my foot really bothered me during Verde Valley Randonnée, and it had been bothering me every ride up until I left. And so that was the thing that caused me the most anxiety. And I thought, I really just don't want to screw up my feet. And so I thought there could have been any number of reasons why my body or my equipment or something like that failed, and I was going to have to just deal with that.
Can we go into the foot thing a little bit?
Sure.
Linger on that. So you had some previous damage done at CTR?
First of all, my feet are completely fucked up.
Yeah.
It looks like God took some bones and put them in a bag and shook them up and put them on my feet.
Stuffed them in your shoes?
So they're a mess. They've been a mess for a really long time. And every time I see a podiatrist, they're just amazed that I haven't had more issues with them.
They like run out screaming, the podiatrist?
They usually are like, well, I've seen worse.
Okay.
But yeah, so my feet are kind of a shit show. And the first time I had some pretty serious issues was my first CTR. I ended up getting trench foot, like honest to God trench foot. People say that they get trench foot, but they don't really. That just means that their feet were cold and maybe they got wrinkly or something. Like I generally had trench foot, which is nerve damage, just like frostbite.
It's like frostbite with water, right? Like
yeah.
I read it was a bacterial Is it a bacterial thing or is it?
The-
Oh, it's like a blood flow thing. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's like you're wet for so long and it's compressed. I think if you're in a in a military situation where people are in wet conditions in trenches and stuff, right? That's the
Yeah.
origin of it.
Yep.
It's not necessarily cold, but it's the wet and the compression, and it causes a lack of blood flow. So it's not bacterial. That's right. I'm remembering back to what I read.
Right.
It's not bacterial.
No.
It's just a lack of blood flow. And they actually like change colors. Your feet start to change colors before. That's one of the preliminary signs that you're getting trench foot.
Yeah, mine looked pretty screwed up after Colorado Trail, and I didn't know what had happened when I finished Colorado. Actually, I didn't finish that year when I was done. When I got home, my feet were totally swollen. I mean, I couldn't barely walk on them. I was like walking bowleg and walking on the side of my feet because they hurt so bad. And I thought I needed to like ice my feet to get the swelling down. And so for like days after my feet were already screwed up, I was like submerging them in ice water, which is literally the worst thing I could have been doing, trying to get swelling down. And so then I did further damage to them.
So you might have almost gotten like minor frostbite after that. And
I don't know if frostbite's really the right way to say it,
nerve
but
damage.
that's sort of the nerve damage. And then may or may not have been related to that. About 6 months after the Colorado Trail, I ruptured a tendon on my third toe. There's really nothing you could do for that. So my middle toe, I can kind of move it a little bit down, but I can't bend it. And then about 3 months.
What were you doing?
I was standing in the shower. I was literally just standing there, and it just went bing, and it didn't really hurt that bad. I was like, huh. And I didn't know I ruptured the tendon at the time. I just couldn't move my toe. And I thought, my feet are so screwed up. I didn't actually think that much of it. And I had already been going to the podiatrist to sort of look at I also had my first neuroma around that time between my second and third toe. So I was already seeing the podiatrist for that. And so then I talked to him about my toe, and he's like, yeah, you ruptured your tendon. By that time, weeks had gone by. There was nothing you could do about it.
What is a neuroma?
It's, I'm not probably going to do its medical definition justice, but it's essentially a swollen nerve bundle. The sheath around the nerve just gets all inflamed and gets huge, and then it's stuffed between the bones, the metatarsals in your feet, and just gets crushed by your bones, and it just gets more inflamed, and then it's just this cycle that goes on and on. It's pretty common in runners or skiers to get a neuroma. So then about 3 months later, I ruptured the tendon on my second toe. So my second and third toe are like basically completely useless. They're just rigid sticks attached to my foot. And then, I don't know what the timeline is, but a few months after that, I had surgery to remove the neuroma between my second and third toe. And so they pulled out this big wad of nerve. And so between my two ruptured toes are I don't have a full set of nerves there. And so those are always numb. And now I have still a neuroma, somehow a little bit further back between those two toes, and a neuroma between my first and second toe, which is the thing that was hurting the most during this particular ride and leading up to it. And a neuroma on my right foot in the same spot.
Okay.
So they're a mess.
And these are kind of, when we were in, when we were in Iceland, you would have to stop, take your shoes off, rest your feet.
Yep.
That's been kind of the only way to manage this moving forward
on
long
and
rides.
Sometimes they don't bother me. I could go months without really having too much pain. This has been a multi-year thing I've been dealing with, and sometimes it's okay. It seems to be worse when it's hot. Like if my feet get swollen and it's hot, it seems to be a lot more intense. During VVR, I had to stop and take my shoe off a couple times because of it. Usually if I stop and take my shoe off for like 5 minutes, I can get like an hour relief. And then that cycle just repeats. In this particular case, during RAS, I was probably a little bit too stubborn for too long and just refused to stop. Because in my mind, I was thinking, I'm not really going to do that much damage. to my foot by continuing to push through it. I now realize that that's not true, because I think I probably did some pretty serious damage to my left foot by continuing to push through it. And by the time I started taking my shoe off to get relief, it was probably a little bit too late. I'd take my shoe off and I'd maybe get 10 minutes of relief. I think I took my shoes off 17 times.
Oh.
I started counting around 6, and so I was guessing that I was around 6, and then I got to 17.
Jeez. Okay, so we got your head state and your physical state leading into it.
Yeah.
Training, big blocks. You were doing big blocks, tons of time. I was watching you on Strava, and I was like, this guy, this is a wild amount of training. Probably the right amount of training for this sort of thing.
It felt a lot because, during the semester, I'm working at least 50 hours a week. And during the end of the semester, it's more like 60 hours a week. And then having a family on top of that, trying to squeeze in training, it was a lot.
Yeah.
It created a lot of stress to try and squeeze it all in and get good sleep and get good nutrition and then get the training in. And then my son's graduation and Pinyons and Pines and all that stuff at the end, it was a lot to manage. Like I had to cut out everything that didn't matter and try and optimize.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, I did a good job, but it was probably a bit much to do all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. So similar situation with Jessica, my wife, 6-month training block leading into Cocodona. After it was over, there was just this, for me, there was just, in her, huge, just sigh of relief, because there was such a strain on the relationship.
Right.
And we don't have nearly the amount of stuff that going on in our lives that you have going on. And was Jen relieved after this is over, after this?
She's not probably relieved yet, because I'm in this. It's probably worse right now.
Yeah.
I'm basically worthless at the moment.
Are you in the afterglow, or are you in the angry phase yet?
I had maybe just a few hours of angry phase. I saw it coming and I was like, dude, you don't have time to be a dick right now. Like your wife just put up with all this stuff and just came and picked you up, and you're suddenly my timing of being angry sort of coincided with me arriving home, and I was like, my kids are here, and you just got to snap out of it. And I had to work pretty hard to not be an asshole, and I was probably for a few hours, and I'm sure I wasn't perfect, but I could have been a whole lot worse.
Yeah.
So the angry phase didn't last too long. Thankfully, I kind of managed it. Afterglow, I'm not sure I had one because I was in so much pain afterwards.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely still recovering. I mean, I'm just sleeping like crazy, eating like crazy. Yeah, my body's going through all kinds of weird shit right at the moment.
Yeah, you don't look too swollen.
Thank you.
But you said earlier,
yeah,
off mic, you feel pretty swollen.
My knees are still swollen. My left foot is definitely swollen. I mean, when I take my socks off, you can sort of see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, nutrition plan leading into it, you were, when we rode a couple of your training rides, and VVR, you were trying the Martin. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think it's Martin or Morton.
Morton?
I think it's Morton.
Yeah. Energy gels, which
Gels
looks
and
like a
liquid.
consistency of hair gel. I've never actually had it, but
Hair gel's a polite way of putting it.
from the images of it, it looks like that really bad hair gel I used to use when I was in high school.
Yeah, I'd say it looks more like semen, but
yeah. Okay. Well, any of those,
yeah,
probably can look like a cum shot.
yeah.
But yeah. So it's interesting. I was comparing last night. I was spending some time comparing. There's the Embark maple syrup stuff that Corey Kronzer was using.
Yeah, which he gave me a few of and I took. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was comparing that to Tailwind, to the Martins. Morton's.
Let's just go with
MAU, right? It's
MAU, but I think it's Morton is how you pronounce it.
Morton. Yeah, because it's a European brand, I think.
And we're sorry, Morton, if we're saying it wrong.
Yeah, sorry. And also comparing to Spring Energy.
Okay.
Just kind of comparing all of them as far as calories to price to quality and stuff like that, and putting them on a scale. And it pretty much went Tailwind. It pretty much went Goo and Tailwind is kind of in this entry level class price wise.
Yep.
And I'm talking, when I was comparing, I was doing price for 100 calories, one serving.
Okay.
That was my one serving number, because they are all different servings. So I just broke it down to 100 calories to make it simple. And it was like Tailwind and Goo. And then I think actually there's some controversy with Spring Energy recently.
I'm not familiar with that at all.
Okay, so it's going around the internet right now. Around some Reddit forums that Spring Energy is actually like half to a third the amount of calories is what they were claiming on their packaging.
Interesting.
There were a couple of people who dehydrated it and measured it, and I don't know how. It was definitely not scientific, and not, who knows the validity of this, but it's kind of started a little bit of a firestorm on the internet about Spring Energy. And one of the things that doesn't really make sense about Spring Energy is, like, how are you able to get that many calories in that same amount of volume with all natural ingredients? Typically, you have to, all these other companies are like spending a lot of money engineering,
yeah,
all these other additives to be able to get the calorie levels and the carbohydrate levels up to like the densest amount possible, right? Because that's the goal of these things, right? And so Spring Energy is kind of like debatable in the middle of it, because until that shakes down, it's a really bad PR. Whether or not, however it pans out for them, whether they were intentionally deceptive or not, it's a really bad PR look right now, because it's just like going around the internet, you know? So anyway, so then you have the Embark maple syrup is somewhere in there. I think it's like $2.50 or something for 100 calories. So to compare that to like Tailwind's like under $1 for 100 calories.
Yep. Which I took a lot of.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Morton's is
a lot.
It's up there. It's like $3.50 or $4 for 100 calories. But it seems like quality there's a factor here, quality over quantity too.
Yep.
So you said that the Morton's, I can't get this right.
One of them's right.
Mortines.
Maybe.
Treated you very well
yes.
on VVR.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did you do? What did you have in your starting kit for nutrition for this?
So my target for Ride Across Arizona was 350 calories per hour of not just carbohydrates, because for that duration, I got to also eat some real food. So for VVR, it was under 20-hour effort. Everything was carbohydrates. For RAS, the goal was 350 calories per hour, and 80% of that at least was going to be carbohydrates. So I packed all of my calories from the start to Flagstaff, which I think was mile 312. So essentially the halfway point. I had all of my calories to consume, and based on my time estimates, which were pretty close to accurate. So I had a little bit of leftover when I got to Flagstaff. And then I had a box at the UPS store in Flagstaff, about 3/4 of a mile off route, ready to go, with a fresh jersey, which was great, and fresh socks and a fresh chain, which I regret. I can come back to that.
Okay.
And all of my food from there to the finish.
Okay.
That way, no matter how stupid I was or whatever, I didn't have to think. Like I just put it. I knew exactly where I was going to go on my bike. I'd practiced it. I didn't have to stop and like count calories in gas stations or do anything like that. I could just supplement with things that looked good when I stopped to get water. And so I had all of my calories for the beginning and then the second half. And I targeted 350 calories per hour. And that was a mix of Morton gels, Morton hydration, tons of Tailwind, some Embark, some Science and Sport gels that Jesse gave me. I had some beef sticks, Cliff Blocks, Scratch gummies.
Scratch gummies are the bomb.
Yeah, interestingly, those are good when you're not, for me anyway, when I'm not too fatigued. Later on, I just did not want to eat those.
Really? Chom.
Yeah, and then I had a couple Pro bars, which also were very hard to eat, so I tried to eat those early on.
Oh, those are the Pro meal bars.
Yeah, the big ones. There's like 350 calories.
Yeah.
That's more or less it. I might have had a mixture of some other things in there, but kind of I would say a third of my calories were from Tailwind, at least. I have it all written down. I'm just guessing it was a third.
Did you do caffeinated or non-caffeinated Tailwind?
Mostly uncaffeinated, and then I had caffeinated set aside for night riding.
Okay.
But I didn't do a ton of caffeine, honestly. Very little. And I will say, let me first say that I would like to buy most of my nutrition locally. You know, I buy as much as I can from Flag Bike Rev as possible. They don't have Morton stuff, so late I've been buying stuff from the feed, and I kind of wait until I have like they do like a rewards program. So if you spend so much money there, you get like I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
It's not a disc. Well, you sometimes get a discount, which I try and use. And so when I have a discount and a voucher, I don't know what the right amount is, but you know, here's $75 towards your next order. Then I'll buy a bunch of Morton. So I'm getting it for less than the sort of retail price, but it's still expensive.
Yeah.
And so that's how I've sort of justified the expense. No matter how fucked up I was and how shitty my stomach was, the one thing I could always eat throughout the whole thing was the Morton gels in the liquid. Sometimes I didn't even want to put the tail into my mouth. Even the smell of it was too much for me. The Cliff Blocks are always pretty good too, but then the scratch gummies, I didn't want anything to do with them.
The Morton's is unflavored.
Unflavored.
Yeah.
It's just sugar, some ratio of sucrose to fructose or whatever, and glucose. And it just works for me. And so it was the one thing I knew when the timer went off, I could eat it and it wasn't going to be a problem and I could swallow it.
Yeah. It's pretty bougie. I think it's like the bouge tip of the spear.
And I think if I had been out there another day or so, it would have been hard to keep that up.
Yeah.
Just because it's, you know, it's not real food.
Dude, on Pinyons, I wish I would have just brought more Tailwind. Like, just keep doing what worked for me in the past. I'm trying these other things, and it's like, I don't know. I was trying to like be more available for gas station food so that I could, you know, I don't know why, because I don't have any big long 4+ day things planned. I guess I do. I guess I have CTR 6 days, so like I can't carry everything
right
for that. But anyway, I don't know why I don't just embrace that for these races. So let's talk about your bike a little bit.
I will also say that when I just speaking of food, I did stop and eat a pizza at a gas station twice actually, and I had a huge amount of McDonald's when I was in Shola.
Yeah, dog. What'd you eat at McDonald's?
I had 4 hash browns, a sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddle, which I think is the most calorie dense thing they have on the menu. A bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, and a sausage biscuit, and a coffee.
Dude.
And I kind of wish I would have gotten more to go.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't want to go back in there. Like right when I finished that stuff and was kind of ready to go, and I thought about getting some more food to go. Like a bunch, like 10 people walked in, and I was like, screw it. I'm good.
Yeah.
But later on, I was like, oh man, I could use some more McDonald's.
Yeah. I gotta give you a shout out for your chicken McNugget suggestion.
They go down easy, right?
Opinions. It went, yeah. So, and I packed some to go, and I put them in a bag that I had chocolate chip cookies in previously.
Ooh,
or there was a couple of chunks of chocolate chip cookies in there still, and it all like completely melted after Camp Verde. And not only I thought the chicken McNuggets were gonna like dry out over time, but they got like more moist.
No, they're expert chemists, aren't they?
Yeah. And it was actually really nice cold, and then some of the chocolate had melted and covered part of it, so it was like a chocolate covered chicken McNugget.
Interesting.
And it's
like dessert nugget.
Exactly. Out of everything that I had in my bag, I was still carrying pizza from like the day before or whatever. Like I carried pizza entirely too far, and I was like, thank you. This is a good call. On the chicken McNug to go.
Yeah, they're good bikepacking. They just go down easy. They're easy to swallow.
Yeah, and then like some dipping sauces. You know, you get some of the highest sugary dipping. I think it's like the barbecue sauce.
I usually skip the dipping sauce.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, I don't take that to go, but like
So Jesse drove me to the start
Mhm.
after he did Pinyons and Pines, went out for a few days, and the start is not too far away from his drive home. And so it just worked out that he could drop me off. And so we stayed in a hotel in Needles, California before the start. And we got there, I don't know, like 8:30 or something like that. And he's like, oh, I'll go to McDonald's. What do you want? Just sit here and get all your stuff together. So Jesse ran to McDonald's and I was like, can you give me some chicken McNuggets? And he's like, which dipping sauce? And I was like, none. And hit the look he gave me.
How dare you?
He's like, and I was like, okay. How about barbecue sauce? And actually, I'm really glad he gave me the look because I was like, wow, that was my first time dipping.
Dude, really?
Because I usually just
Come on,
do
man.
straight chicken McNuggets. I just didn't want to, I didn't want to fluff around with the sauce, but I was pretty grateful for that. So thank you, Jesse.
He was like, try again. Try your answer again.
Yeah, I mean, he looked horrified. Like, what?
Yeah.
No sauce?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So your bike.
My bike.
So titanium hardtail mountain bike.
Yep. Binary SSP, which stands for sit, stand, push, which I've had for years. It's my favorite bike of all time. I had waffled on doing the ride with my gravel bike and then my SSP with a rigid fork on it. And then I was like, who the hell am I kidding? I should do this on my mountain bike. It's the most comfortable and I've got shitty wrists. I'm just going to put the suspension fork on there. So I just ran my mountain bike with Race King tires, suspension fork, and the flex handlebars and the new big giant Ergon ping pong paddle grips, which I'm madly in love with.
Yep.
And aero bars.
And you got the shifting, you have axis, so you have the shifting controllers
Yeah,
on the
the
ends of your aero
blips on
bars.
the aero bars.
They're called blips?
Yeah, I'll never not use those. I think it's a game changer for me.
So you can shift from the aero position.
Yes, and that's so much better for my wrist. One of the big aggravators of this wrist is actually shifting. And so that one, I can just kind of like hit it with my palm and it's great.
You look so comfortable in the aero position. I just can't. I feel like when I'm in it, I don't look that comfortable, and I'm not that comfortable.
Jesse actually said the same thing to me, and I've actually never seen myself in the aero position, but I've been, slowly working on it for the last several months. Getting a little lower slowly over time. I actually wish I would have been a little less low at the end. I was like kind of wishing I was a little bit more upright. But yeah, I wish I could have spent more time in the aero bars during the whole event. I think that would have really helped my wrist a lot, but the washboards and headwind were so brutal on huge chunks of the course that I couldn't get in the aero bars either because I was going too slow and I'd fall over, get blown over, or it was just too bouncy to sort of steer and, be in the aero position. So, but I tried to use them whenever I possibly could, even riding uphill.
What was your gearing?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you got
I don't know.
you're gearing on like
Eagle,
what size chainring?
I think I have a 30. I have either a 34 or 36 in the front,
and then an Eagle 50.
Yeah, 52 in the back.
2 in the back.
Yep.
Okay.
And that worked. Near the end, there were a couple times I was kind of wishing I had a slightly easier gear, but it was fine. And only a couple times was I spun out. So I think I nailed the gearing. It's pretty perfect.
Cool. And then you brought a sleep kit.
I had a quilt and a ground cloth and a pillow. And I used it.
And there was no weather in the forecast, so no.
Yep.
Did you ditch the rain gear? And
no rain gear.
No rain gear,
Yep.
no cup, no tarp or anything.
No.
Okay. So this thing starts in Topock.
Topock.
How's that town?
There's like a restaurant there.
Okay. I've never been.
I mean, and honestly, I only saw it in the dark. Jesse and I arrived when it was dark. We drove through it. And then, Needles is like 10 miles into California. So we stayed at the hotel there. And then he dropped me off and I started at 5 a.m. And so I didn't really see Topock.
Yeah. Okay. Topock is like, I don't know, under 1,000 feet.
It's like, I think it's like 500 feet.
Yeah.
It's right at the Colorado River. So it starts pretty low.
Yeah.
I started a little earlier than the Grand Depart because I wanted to beat the heat. I think I timed the temperature pretty great for the start. I think I lucked out. I don't deal very well with the heat and I haven't ridden in it very much this year. My Garmin recorded 105 at some point. I don't think it was ever really that hot.
Yeah.
And
right.
it was really windy, really windy in the beginning. So I think that helped, even though I said fuck you to the wind a lot the
Yeah.
first few hours.
So the first 250 miles go from 472 feet to 7,000 feet, which is just wild. Like, and it's all kind of deserty at the beginning.
Yep.
The roads are like washboardy,
Washboards,
just endless
sand
Okay.
and washboard.
Is it pedalable sand?
Yes, I think once in that beginning part, I came off in the sand and had to walk. It's like in a little wash, and it just kind of like, I mean, I probably could have powered through, but I was like, I'm not going to like push down massively right now. I'm just going to get off and walk. So I think I got off and walked once in the sand, maybe twice.
Yeah, that first day, according to track leaders, you were crushing. You were like going really, really, really fast for that kind of elevation.
So the first resupply is in Baghdad, Arizona, mile 112. I had written down all the time splits for both Dexter and Dirty Dan, and they both hit Baghdad at 8.5 hours in, and I hit it at 9 hours. And I tried not to really look at the timer until I got there. And I was probably, I had a sort of power guide for what I should be at, and I was at the upper end of that and probably a little bit over. And the headwind was just outrageous, and the washboards were kind of outrageous. And I was a little deflated when I got there a half an hour behind them, because I was thinking, holy shit, I'm only going to get slower. I'm at my freshest right now. It wasn't that hot. I'm sure they probably had a headwind too, so that may be a wash. Maybe they didn't have a headwind. I definitely did, but I was half an hour behind schedule, and I was like, holy shit, I don't think I'm gonna be able to pull this off, but I'm just gonna keep going. And so I got to Baghdad, and I ended up getting a Coke, which was amazing because it was hot, and then just refilled on water. Swapped stuff on my bike at this picnic table, refilled everything, threw out my trash, and got going. So it wasn't quite as quick of a first turnaround as I wanted to, but I didn't linger. I kind of wanted to sit there and rest, but I did all my errands and got rolling.
Yeah, and you knew you had that pretty planned out. Like going into it, you were like, okay, I'm going to do XYZ.
Yep, I had a plan. I'm going to do XYZ, and I implemented that, and getting a Coke was not on the menu, but it was the right call to sort of drink something nice and cold.
Yeah.
It was the warmest part of the day for me, I think. Maybe it was a little warm after that.
So is Baghdad a little higher in elevation then? You're kind of getting out of the heat at that point?
I don't know what the elevation is.
Yeah.
A couple thousand feet maybe at that point.
Yeah.
And coming into that, I had to drive to this construction zone. That slowed me down too. Like a lot. I was able to keep moving, but like, and it was hot. It was like a pavement. It was pretty warm in the pavement. There were all these trucks with hot asphalt in them and blowing with smoke. So that was pretty bad. So I had like, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes of dealing with that. So that was kind of really annoying. I don't know what the elevation was.
Yeah. I just mean, well, I mean, we can't look it up. I wish we could, but you were out of the heat. You said earlier you timed the heat pretty well.
I did, but it was still warm at that point because now it's, I'm 9 hours in, so it's, it's midday. I'm still at not too high of elevation. It's still pretty, it's definitely, I'm in the desert at that point still.
Okay. So then after first resupply in Baghdad, where's the next like big goal spot to get to?
After Baghdad is Seligman, like mile 205.
Okay. So you got another less than 100 miles from there to there. Yep. And what's the terrain like between those two places?
It's actually, that was one of the more enjoyable stretches. You climb up onto this mesa, I think, out of Baghdad. You go up in elevation, and so it's beginning later in the day, and you're going up in elevation pretty quickly from there. So now it's starting to cool off. And I started to sort of like get in a rhythm. Like I was feeling pretty good there. It was also when my foot started hurting. That was the first time where I was like, ooh, this is gonna be rough, because that normally takes a lot longer to start hurting that bad. And so at some point along between Baghdad and Seligman, it's the first time I stopped and took my shoes off to specifically to rest my feet.
And what time of the day is it now?
I don't know.
Yeah,
3-4 o'clock. And I don't know. I started 5, so 9 hours in. I got to Baghdad at, help me out with some math, so 2 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I'd say probably a couple hours after Baghdad is the first time I stopped and took my shoes off. And I should have taken them off when I was resupplying in Baghdad. That was always part of the plan, and I don't think I did. I mean, it didn't probably make that much of a difference, but it would help a little bit.
Yeah.
After that, I was pretty militant about, as soon as I'd get to resupply, I would just take my shoes off and do whatever I needed to do barefoot.
Okay.
One of the best stretches of the route is somewhere between Baghdad and Seligman on Camp Wood Road. I really, really enjoyed that part. No washboards, a bunch of climbing, not too steep, so it suited me pretty well. And I just felt, other than my foot, I felt really good. And you're getting into the trees and starting to cool off, and it was really enjoyable.
Yeah. So you get a little burst of energy there, right?
Yeah, I mean,
You're
it was
starting to feel a little.
Yeah, I was feeling really good. I would say
Yeah.
that was like the best I felt on the whole route was that stretch.
How did you stay? Do you have a good system for staying on top of water, drinking water and food, and keeping your calories?
A huge amount. So I had flasks in my vest.
Oh, you went with the flasks this time.
I did, and I went with hard flasks, the new Hydro Pack bottles.
Okay.
Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would do that again. They're good if you're standing upright, but as soon as you bend over, getting the aero bars, they kind of dig into your pecs.
Oh.
So that was something I didn't test. I was just like kind of a last minute thing.
So you soft flask.
I would, I don't know. I mean, I needed that capacity. A couple times I ran out of water, never for very long, but I had 5 liters of capacity and went through it a couple of times.
Okay.
So I had the 500 milliliters, 2.5 liters in my back, which just had element in it with salt. And then I had 2 750 milliliter bottles, one in my frame and one in my down tube. And then occasionally I would carry also a bottle of Coke or 2. So I had Morton's in here, salt in the back, and then Tailwind on the 2 other bottles on my bike.
Okay. And then the Cokes were like in your kangaroo pockets on your vest?
Or in my frame bag. I really did a good job packing, and so I actually always had a lot of swap space in my frame bag, so sometimes I could put the bottle in my frame bag.
I'm super leery about putting Coke or carbonated stuff in the frame bag.
I kind of like it because I'd rather drink it when it's a little flat, and so I'm just really smart about opening it very slowly after it's been bouncing around.
I'm afraid it's going to explode in there.
It hasn't happened to me yet.
So I just always exclusively carry them in the kangaroo pouches.
Yeah, I had a lot of my powder in there because I'm always worried about blowing holes in my baggies. So.
Right. Yeah, right.
Which I did.
Right. Okay.
At one point.
Okay.
Yeah.
You threw the freezer bags?
No, the Morton pouches. So I leave the Mortons in their dedicated pouch, and those ones are more susceptible to getting holes in them. And I'd put a bunch in my tail fin bag in the back where my sleep kit was. And 2 of those got opened and destroyed.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Tailfin. We forgot to mention that earlier. Tailfin, rack.
Yep.
And bag. No front roll.
No front roll.
Seems like the ideal aero setup.
That's what I was thinking. I did have one feed bag in the front, which, I could have done away without that, but I found over time that if you over optimize everything, it's really hard to like move stuff around and change layers and things like that. And so I actually had a lot of swap space available to me.
Yeah.
Like when I had all my layers on, the only thing I had in my tail fin was my quilt, ground cloth, and pillow. There was nothing in there. And then half the time my frame bag was half empty. So I had all my food in a front pouch, sort of a rear gas tank, and then that feed bag up front, and then lots of powder in my hydration vest. So, but I always had room to like move stuff around even while it was on the bike, which was really nice.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like I had excess crap.
Yeah, that seems it does seem nice to have some capacity, because everything kind of goes awry over time. As far as like, it's hard to stay really disciplined with where you're putting your stuff back into.
Yeah. Yeah. So I felt like, yeah, it worked pretty well where I had everything. Because normally my frame bag is like filled to the max. I fill that first and then put things elsewhere. But here I use that last to sort of put stuff in there. So I always had room to like move stuff out of there.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah. Cool. So then, okay. So bring me through Seligman. You're kind of, this is west of Williams on Route 66.
That's correct. Yeah, you're west of Williams on Route 66. Yeah, coming into so you're kind of heading on that Camp Wood Road. I actually not sure how much of that stretch was Camp Wood Road. Maybe it was 30 miles or something. Whatever, that part was great. You hit some paved road. I don't know what it was, but if you go right, you'd go towards Prescott. I hung a left. Immediately the pavement ended, and I'm starting to head north. I thought for a little while I was going to have like a tailwind, but then it became like a cross headwind. And the first few miles were like just perfect dirt. I was like, oh, this is great. This is probably the main road from Prescott to Seligman. I'm just going to fly on this section. I finally get off some washboards. But that only lasted a few miles, and then it was kind of washboardy after that. So it's kind of a slog. It's gradual climbing. Never anything too steep all the way from there to Seligman. I reached Seligman in the dark. 16 hours maybe in at that point, I think. At that point, I think I was 2 hours up on, or 1.5 or 2 hours up on Dirty Dan's time. So I went from a half an hour behind to like an hour and a half or 2 hours up. I know he had a mechanical sometime between there, which he said cost him about 45 minutes. So that's part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was pretty quick at the resupply at a Chevron in Seligman. I knew if I lingered there, because I was getting tired, I'm 200 miles in and sun's down, it's starting to cool off. I could get sucked into staying there. So I was pretty militant about walking in, grabbing what I needed, and going outside where it was colder. So I would be motivated to just get everything done. So I finally took my shoes off. I ate a pizza.
What kind of pizza?
Whatever the gas station had, pepperoni pizza. Yeah. It was probably sitting on the heating rack for hours and hours. It tasted like it anyway, but I didn't care.
It's probably pretty good.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I got out of there in a pretty reasonable amount of time. And then it's pavement for a little while as you start heading due east towards Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling pretty good. And then I'm getting tired, and that is the beginning of the pain. Like my foot had been bothering me, but now it was like my right foot was also hurting. My left wrist was starting to hurt at this point from all the washboards, and I was kind of just hoping I was at a low point, but yeah, from, I don't know, mile 220 to the end was a pretty serious mental challenge.
Ugh. So 2/3 of it.
Yeah.
So were the washboards like, could you navigate to spots without washboards?
Sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of.
Sometimes you couldn't.
Yeah. I hate dude, washboards are like.
Yeah.
I would hike a bike crazy, lift your bike up over stuff, over wash. They seem to vibrate your brain.
Yep.
To a point where it's like the wind. It just kind of eats you away slowly, like torturously over time.
So if you're dealing with washboards and a headwind and your body is screaming in pain, that was, for me, was the trifecta of testing my mental fortitude.
And you're like, all right, I'm just going to keep going because
sometimes
this is fun.
I tried actually not to think. Which sounds ridiculous, I guess. Like other times in my life, I'd sort of have like some sort of mantra I would just repeat. But here, I literally had no choice but to go a little bit darker and deeper than that and just like not think. And there were times when, especially that into the second day, where my foot wasn't hurting. It wasn't constant, but it was most of the time. And searing pain. And then just enough discomfort in my left wrist that I was having to sit on the bike a little bit crooked. And I was really worried about my back because of that. You know, I'm leaning more on my right and trying to get in the washboards, as much in the aero bars as possible to try and get weight off my wrist. And then I'm trying to deal with my left foot. And so I was constantly just like trying to change positions and just sort of deal with it and tried not to look at the odometer because it's like, I'm like in so much pain. I didn't want to like, oh my God, I've only gone a half a mile. So I just literally tried to like disappear.
Yeah.
And just not be there for a while. And then I suddenly got really, really tired. Oh, let me back up and say I didn't have a sleep or not sleep plan. I went into it being flexible. I knew I wasn't going to do the whole thing without sleeping. And I wasn't really willing to do that, but I wasn't really sure how the first night was going to play out. And I figured, well, I should just ride while I'm feeling decent. And if I need to lay down and sleep, I'm going to do that. But then like the pain coupled with more or less being awake, I mostly rode through the night. So maybe an hour outside of Williams. I decided I just couldn't deal with the pain anymore. And I was just tired enough that it might make sense to lay down. And so I laid down for about an hour. I immediately fell asleep and that didn't last very long. For whatever reason, I woke up. I'm not sure. I'm just going to guess after 20 minutes. And then I decided I was still going to just keep laying there for the full hour, even though I was awake. And that was really nice to get my shoes off and sort of recoup. So I lay down for about an hour. And then as soon as I got started, the sun came up and that was a really nice recharge. And then I came to Williams and then resupplied at the Circle K, which really meant just get water. I didn't do anything else. I just got water, threw out my trash, put my tailwind in Morton's Inn, and then I was off to Flagstaff. I think I was 3 hours up on Dirty Dan's time at that point.
What's Dan's? Do you know his last name?
Connell or
yeah,
Connolly?
Dan Connolly.
Yeah,
Connolly maybe. Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Just we've only been calling him by his nickname.
Well, you know, he put it on track leaders that way.
Oh, okay. I got it. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. So okay.
Yeah.
Flagstaff. Like, were you at any point were you worried about like the draw of being close to home? Does that affect you in the middle of
In
these
this
things?
particular case, it didn't.
Okay.
I was kind of on autopilot. I wasn't thinking clearly or unclearly one way or the other. The sun was up and that was kind of nice. But by the way, I will say I've ridden all the roads between Williams and Flagstaff. Sorry to say this, Craig. I'm not a huge fan of the particular route that we do between Williams and Flagstaff. And I had pre-rode it a couple weeks beforehand, so I was not looking forward to that part. Yeah. And I was already suffering. And so I kind of just tried to hammer through the shitty part as quick as possible. The first half, actually, between Williams and Flagstaff is quite nice. You go by Dogtown Lake and a few other things and get to Garland Prairie, and then the shit kind of happens after that. And so you're doing this power line riding for a while, and then like this pretty shitty rocky road. But the sun was up and it was warm. And I just tried to get that over with as quick as possible. So I got to Flagstaff and I was just focused on getting to the pavement so I could like stop bouncing around and get in the aero bars. And then got to Lake Mary Road in just outside of Flagstaff. And then I had a box waiting for me at the UPS store. So I rode 3/4 of a mile off route to the UPS store and immediately got to work on swapping everything out.
Yeah.
Took my shoes off, changed my jersey, changed my socks. I've recently become a waxed chain guy, so I decided I would put on a freshly waxed chain. And I spent probably 30 minutes fucking with my chain. I couldn't get it on. I couldn't get the quick links to line up, but I was cleaning the wax off. I wasted so much time and I was feeling really good probably until after about 20 minutes of that, because I'd done everything else. Like all I had to do was my chain. and it was calm. And then like that last 10 minutes, I was starting to like freak out and panic.
Huh.
Because like the sun was starting to hit me, and there was people that kept trying to talk to me, and I was starting to get grumpy. And I was like, why the fuck can't I do this? Like, I've swapped so many chains in my life. It's like, it should be no big deal. And I just couldn't get it. I kept taking it off and loosening stuff and getting the wax off there. I actually tried to use my old quick link instead of the new one, and I just couldn't. And then eventually I just like crossed my fingers and pulled really hard, and it snapped into place.
Oh.
And
you were afraid you were going to damage it.
I was really worried. Yes,
Yeah.
I was trying not to like just be a muscle head and just force it into place, because I was. But the last 5-10 minutes, I was like in kind of like panic mode. And then once that got sorted out, I was on the road and going. Oh man! And immediately my foot started hurting. It was so nice to have my shoe off, and then that next 6 hours was complete torture and misery.
Backing up, Jess and I were speculating that you were like at Cafe Rio eating like 5,000 calories.
No, I think I would have stopped someplace at Pizza Hut's right there or Cafe Rio.
Yeah.
And gotten some food if I didn't waste so much time messing with my chain.
Dinking it around. Yeah.
But I was so anxious at that point. I was like, I just got to get going. Because I didn't, most dangerous part for me was having time to think. And if I'd sat down to eat, I think my mind would have started to get going. Which is kind of what happened to me. Like, I'm on familiar territory after leaving the resupply. I'm on Lake Mary Road, which I've ridden hundreds of times. It's not that hard. I'm finally in the aero bars. It's nice and smooth. It was a lot hotter than I was expecting, a little bit breezy. And now my mind's able to start going because I'm close to home, and I know I'm in familiar territory. And I was starting to wonder, like, what the hell am I doing out here? Like, this hurts so bad. I'm not having fun anymore. I'm only halfway. Like, can I do this? Can I deal with what I'm dealing with right now for the amount of time I've just been out there, probably longer? And I didn't know if I could. Like, I was starting to doubt like my sanity, and I was like, what's the point? Like, why am I doing this? And so I just kept on going because I didn't know what else to do. I went around Mormon Lake. So we're at that point, you take a right at the mailboxes that you're familiar with and follow Pinyons and Pines course for around Mormon Mountain. And I got to Weimer Spring, and I was just in so much pain. I was crying because it hurt so bad. I needed to sit down. So I just flopped down in the shade and had like a 45-minute cry session. I didn't have good self-reception, which is probably good because I couldn't really text anyone. I just had to sort of sit there in my own thoughts and emotions, and I was really questioning what the hell I was doing.
When you're in these moments, like, I think it's very common, and it's very important for people to hear that, you know, you're questioning the why when you're out there. All of us seem to have those moments, right? But when it comes to like the injuries, like, maybe do you have thoughts that you are creating irreversible damage? And is it worth it? Is this valuable enough for me to get whatever this is that I'm trying to like what are you're not getting paid for this?
Nope.
Right? You're like, you set an FKT and you're now like on this obscure website's table, right? Of like, and I think it's an incredible feat.
Nobody cares.
Right. Well, but it's about a lot more than that. It's about what it means to you to be able to do this, and the ups and downs, and this is the first real big thing since Stagecoach. You know, like, where's that line for you, man? Like, I'm not really sure I made the right choice ultimately. I don't know. I mean, ultimately I pushed through it. I convinced myself at the time, mostly through just stalling, making a decision. I wouldn't say I actually decided I was going to do it. It was more like I just kept putting off deciding to stop long enough that I finished. Okay. So you chunked it out into I
just lived in the moment as best that I could.
Yeah.
And I knew one of the things that kept me going was I knew that I was going to feel really bad about myself if I stopped. I've quit a few things, and only once did I really regret it. The first year of Pinyons and Pines, I had like a 6-hour lead, and I dropped out with like 20 miles to go because I whacked my knee the night before and I could barely pedal, and I'd convinced myself I was doing irreparable damage. And so Jen came and picked me up. I woke up the next day and my knee felt totally fine and everything was fine. And I was like, that was stupid. I should have just crawled.
Do you feel weaker as a person because of that? Like what's the feeling that you go through when you're?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Judging yourself so harshly,
You think most of the time you're in these moments, you think, oh, I need to stop because of XYZ. This is too dangerous, or this is too painful, or I'm doing damage, and you stop. And it just feels later like you made the wrong decision because you were in this compromised state at the time. Other times when I've quit, like the 2 years later in Pinyons and Pines, I dropped out because I was sick. I have no regrets about that. Like it was during COVID, but I didn't end up having COVID. But yeah, I was so sick the next few days after that. Like I'm not sure I could have finished if I wanted to. So I don't regret that one.
Yeah.
And I went back, and it's my own home race. And so.
And you don't judge other people? Do you ever judge other people when they drop out?
No, because now everybody's got to make their own decisions. I mean, I think probably a lot of times early on when people have had to make those decisions a few times, they probably could have kept going a little bit longer, but everybody's got to make their own decision, ultimately.
What about people that they go hard? I've seen, I won't name any names, and this is more in the running community, but there's people that say, oh, I'm going to do a 100-mile race every month for 12 months. And you kind of know that they're not maybe physically in the best position to do that. And you kind of know they're going to drop, but they're kind of doing it as almost a marketing stint sort of thing. I judge those people. I'm like, you should train better up for, you should spend more time in training to be able to, because I think there's people that maybe get in over their heads on a few things, and the safest way to do something, then there are those people that finish. They can finish that stuff. There's some amazing things, but then the safest way to do something is to properly train to accomplish a goal and scale into it, in my opinion, right?
Absolutely. Everybody should do that. Yeah. I mean, some people can just kind of throw themselves at it and not have any issues physically.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we are not all created equal.
Right. Yeah, those people are
I couldn't run
gifted sometimes,
Yeah, I couldn't run 100 miles right now.
Right. Yeah. Running. Yeah. I don't know, but it's an interesting thing because when I dropped out of the Arizona Trail Race 800, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I definitely was in a hole of self-judgment, and because the next couple days I was doubting my decision making. I could have probably gone on
right
when I just gave myself some space, and then I felt like I didn't even want to watch the end of the race or have anything to do with it for the next couple of weeks as the finishers were coming through.
Mm-hmm.
It was miserable for a year until I could go get a little bit of redemption on the 300.
Yeah, it just I don't know what the right way to describe it. Maybe it's different for everybody, but it feels a little bit, like you let yourself down, or sometimes you feel like you let other people down, or there's your own self-imposed expectations and then not meeting those. It sort of feels icky. But I feel like I kind of hope everybody does enough of these types of events, whether it's running or cycling or something else, where they kind of have a time where they have to drop out. And it would be nice if everybody had both a variety of situations where they felt like they made the right decision, because sometimes it is, and a couple of experiences where it wasn't. I also dropped out of my first CTR, and I don't regret that at all. And even though I know that was the right decision and I would make the same call 1,000 times over, that one still bothers me. I was so close to the end and doing so well, and I just wish that one would have worked out, but ultimately it didn't, and I just have to deal with that. So I think I've dropped out of 3 things, and 2 of them I'm happy with, comfortable with, and one of them totally made the wrong call. And so I kind of know, I knew what it would feel like to have not finished. And I'd spent so many months preparing. and wanted to finish so badly that I knew that it was going to feel really awful if I didn't. And that did keep me going, for better or worse.
Now, is a lot of this self-imposed pressure from some of your upbringing you've publicly discussed?
Yeah, all of it, probably. Yeah, I grew up in a no pain, no gain household,
Right. So
Yeah.
this is early young Dana programming.
Absolutely. Yeah. For those that don't know, my dad was a wrestling coach growing up. He's in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. I grew up around Olympians and national champions and Olympic gold medalists and world champions and coaches and wrestlers. And that's kind of the environment I grew up in. I've told you this a few times, but just a couple glimpses into my childhood. Like when I was in high school, I wasn't allowed to come back into the house until I'd climbed the rope in the backyard a certain number of times. I went to the same high school that my dad went to. There's a lot of pressure on me to perform. I wrestled varsity in 8th grade. I didn't do very well. My dad was pissed. He was coaching at a neighboring high school, and he was like, well, you didn't do very well. I gave you a chance. Now you got to come wrestle with me. And I said no. And he said yes. And I said no. And he said yes. And then the compromise was, well, if you can bench press 205 pounds before your freshman year, then you can go wherever you want. And so that entire summer, all I did was lift weights. And right at the end, I bench pressed 205 pounds. And then I was able to go to the high school that I wanted to go to, which is where all my friends were going. And then I wrestled my freshman year and I didn't do very well. And then the same thing happened. And then the new deal was 305 pounds. And so then I had to bench press 305 pounds between freshman year and sophomore year. And again, I barely pulled that off. And then I started doing really well in wrestling, but like, this is the kind of environment I grew up in, and it shaped me.
Didn't you say that he would bring like a trailer full of weightlifting equipment on your vacations?
Yes.
Did you tell me that?
Weightlifting or wrestling or some sort of challenge was part of life all the time. And so I don't remember what year it was. I think maybe it was that summer, actually. Yeah, maybe the summer before my freshman year, we drove across country. My father, me, and my cousin Scott, and my grandfather in an RV. And we had a full set of free weights with the bench press.
Yeah.
So we'd pull up to the campground, and that would be like we'd set up the bench press in the campground. Like I have video of me like bench pressing in a campground at Lake Tahoe.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a little much.
And I knew it was weird, but I also that was my life, right? So I didn't think it was that weird. But certainly people were walking by thinking, what the hell is with this family?
Didn't you also tell me that Lou Ferrigno worked out at the same gym?
So for a little while growing up, my dad owned a gym that was short-lived, but
Okay.
yeah. And then Lou Ferrigno, when he was in town, would come work out at my dad's gym. Lou Ferrigno was the original Incredible Hulk.
Right.
Yeah. So I have pictures
you
of
young
like
people.
Lou Ferrigno holding me as I was like a 4-year-old kid.
Yeah, so this is definitely an extreme environment. Like the wrestlers like anybody who wrestles or has wrestled. I never wrestled, but I know from being around it and watching enough like UFC and stuff, wrestling's like one of the hardest things to do. Discipline, there's the weight cutting, there's just the training. It's just like this environment of just like hardened people,
Without a doubt, I think my upbringing in wrestling is the sole reason why I have any moderate success in anything that I do in my life, whether it be as a college professor, doing mathematics, finishing a PhD, or bikepacking. Like wrestling for me set the stage for everything. It's the foundation by which I lean on. Mental state, preparation, commitment, all that stuff.
And like self-torture.
Yeah.
Like type 2 fun, like going back to the well to go into this place of weird self-torture that a lot of us dip our toes into a little bit with endurance sports, right? It's this like desire to go to this place and to emerge from the other side somehow, right?
Yep.
No matter what the physical or mental consequences may be, right? And people have a scale of it, right? So like there's the extreme sleep deprivation and the hurting yourself or whatever, and then there's like the people who just kind of touch a little bit into it and say, I'm good with that. That's enough, right?
And I respect all of it. I hope we're not glamorizing all this. I mean, I hope I've said I was in a tremendous amount of pain enough times to make people realize that the whole thing is kind of stupid. But there's also something I really cherish about it. But I absolutely don't think everybody should try and replicate what I just did. I think that's a horrible idea. But I do value the experience that I just had. But if other people want to go have the complete opposite experience, I don't think that's any less valuable. I do think people should try and dip their toe into some pretty challenging situations every once in a while, just to sort of, I don't know, adds a different perspective on life, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't think everybody should do that all the time by any stretch of the imagination. I was definitely questioning what the hell I was doing, and yeah, I wouldn't try and sell it.
Yeah. So this podcast I kind of do glamorize things a little bit, but it's more like fascination, I think, with like the psychology behind some of these, the tip of the spear athletes, and you've always been kind of like a unicorn to me a little bit on this stuff. Like I don't understand why you would go to a point to hurt yourself, because my self-preservation instincts are like much higher than yours for certain things like this. I just wouldn't do that. I would just, like on Pinyons, I just decided, I went into it thinking I'm going to push through the first night. I want to get top 10, but my desire quickly faded away to get top 10. I just quit caring when I started full body cramping and I was just tired and I slept for a few hours and then I was satisfied with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still got the enjoyment out of the whole experience. But my goal was never like, I wasn't 6 months out saying I'm going to get top 10. It was kind of a soft goal for me.
Right.
And if it worked out, great, but it didn't. And I don't regret it. Like I got 8 hours of sleep. I came in 11th place. I met a ton of people. I pulled a couple podcasts out of it.
Yep.
Like I enjoyed more the social side of it this year than I have any other time ever, really.
Right.
And so that was what I got out of it. But I also think there's a lot of value in pushing yourself and resetting your perspective on how hard things are in life, whatever that may mean for you as an individual.
Yeah.
Right. Because the hardest thing you've done is the hardest thing you've done. Like people's scale of what's hard is different. But I think that it's healthy to constantly like move that bar a little bit more and be like, oh yeah, like, okay, this makes the rest of my life, this makes my work drama so much easier because I know what really hard is, now.
I think I've said things like that before and I meant it. It's probably true, but I'm not really sure what positive I got out of this one in this particular case.
Yeah, that's wild.
I don't regret it, but I'm sure I could get philosophical and come up with something pretty deep and profound right now. But I think right now I'm kind of just left with a sense of like, what the fuck did I just do? Was it worth it? I don't really know. I'm not sure I'll ever know. And I think I'm okay with that. It is what it is. It is what I did. While I was out there, I wasn't thinking about the record or FKT anymore. I just wanted to like be able to get to the end. I did have a sense of urgency just to get it over with as quick as possible, but I wasn't really worried about my time after Mormon Lake. That kind of like went out the window. I was literally just trying to hang on and get it over with, just so that I wouldn't have to deal with not having pulled it off.
That pain on course was, whatever it was less than what the self-torture you would have put yourself through for quitting.
I convinced myself that was true. If I have long-term damage in my foot, which is probably the only thing I'm really worried about at this point. My wrist hurt, but today it doesn't feel any worse than it did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
my back hurts, but my back always hurts, and my fingers are numb, but my fingers are always numb, and I'm tired, but I'm always tired, and so those things will come around. But my left foot, I'm like, ooh, I did some pretty serious damage. Like there's a lump down there, it's swollen, I can't walk on it normally.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll come around, but
Yeah.
I did some damage, and maybe it'll be fine. But I don't know. Was it worth it? I'm not sure. I really don't know.
Yeah, it's so wild, the psychology here.
Yeah.
It's so like complicated.
So, yeah, I mean, we say things like suffering all the time, and some people really get bothered by that because this is self-imposed, and this is a really good example of where I made all of these choices. Like I got to be careful right now around my family complaining about how much I hurt. Like I did this to myself. Like this is no one else's fault but my own. And so I do use the word suffering, but I also understand why some people are really bothered by that phrase, because there are people in this world who are literally suffering, and it is not of their own doing. And this is not at all the same thing. So I'm not really sure what word to use, but I just want to acknowledge that I understand that there's a difference, but I do use the word suffering. I was, self-inflicted pain. I mean, ultimately I wanted to go out there and have a positive experience seeing all these cool places in Arizona. And I think I did pull that off, but it came with a pretty heavy price. And I can't undersell how much pain I personally was in for so long. And a really interesting thing happened, which was cool and also terrifying at the same time. So sometime the second night, I was pretty out of it. I was just like in the hurt locker and just trying to keep moving, trying to manage the pain in my feet, my hands. And I was like, oh, it's really nice that I'm not alone right now. And I remember having that thought and then kind of coming back to it and thinking, oh yeah, it's really nice that somebody else has been with me this whole time. And then I was like, well, I'm alone. What, like, you're so out of it. Like there's nobody with you. And then I'd change positions on the bike and I'd be like, oh, it's really useful that this person's here right now pedaling for me. And then like this kind of evolved slowly over time, and kind of to get to the story, I realized that at least temporarily I had 3 personalities going on. Like there were 3 versions of me. And
Holy
it was
shit.
clear as day to me that this came out of not only just the sleep deprivation and being tired, but I was in so much pain that my mind found a way to deal with it. There were 3 Danas out there, and they switched who I was based on what position I was in on the bike.
Whoa.
The dude that was Dana that stood up and was pedaling was like strong gladiator Dana, who was the first one on the scene to help me out. And I was grateful that guy was there. That wasn't like the original version of me. That was like the new version that came out and that could just deal with anything, but for only short periods of time. And then the version of me, which is ordinary me, was the one that was just ordinary position on the bike, hands on the handlebars, which is the one dealing with all the pain. And then there was the other softer, more reflective version of me, which is the one in the aero bars. And that basically, those 3 versions of me lasted for the next 20 hours. They were just there with me. And I was like flowing back and forth between these different personalities. And I could also be like, okay, I don't think I just lost my mind, but this is like a real thing. And I'm not at all downplaying mental illness, but I could kind of see now why this happens to people when they're in traumatic situations. And I am not comparing the real trauma that people deal with for my pain, but I was in a lot of pain and my mind found a way to sort of like manage all this by like manifesting these other personalities to sort of compartmentalize the suffering that I was going through. And it was wild, super wild.
Yeah. I mean, all I can think of is the scene in the Lord of the Rings where Gollum they're switching the camera angles and he's like He's Gollum,
Yeah.
and then he's the other guy.
But we all got along, and it was like every time I'd stand up, then the other versions could rest. And if I got in the aero bars, the other versions could rest. And it was like I was rotating between these people to try and just manage the whole thing, because I just like one version of me was not enough to deal with it.
That is so fucking crazy.
It really was fucking crazy. And when I told Jen about it, she was just looking at me like, that is just fucking wild.
Yeah, so disassociation, right?
Yeah, it was legit real. I mean, for me in that moment, it was real. Whether how much of it was brought on by lack of sleep and everything else, but to me, it was really like a response to, I'm in so much fucking pain right now. This hurts so bad, and all I want to do is stop. That the only way I can keep going is to sort of like create these little subversions of me to sort of like rotate through the pain.
Did you have, during those, were you in each personality, or were you ever extracted kind of like a viewer of yourselves?
Every time, literally the switch was the position on the bike. And it wasn't a conscious thing like, oh, I would switch positions like I normally would, but then there'd be the new version, and it was like very subtle. So the other two would sort of like be watching the third, getting rest. Like resting and recuperating, and then they'd switch, and it got me through. And it also was something novel to pay attention to. I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and so I could focus on that instead of the pain.
So wild. You've never had this happen before?
No way. And as soon as I was done, now I'm fine. Like, I'm back to normal me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's, drugs can put you into these certain like dissociative states, and extreme things endogenously, like things that happen from within that aren't exogenous, like drug use. But I've heard about this dissociative state now a few times. It happened to Jessica going up on the Cocodona, going up the Mount Eldon. It's like she was a viewer of herself.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get in, not in writing. I've never pushed to that point, but I get sometimes I'll have a glimmer of that, that viewer state, which is kind of weird. But the 3 is very interesting, and aligning with this physical state that you were in.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, I'm seeing it from like a video producer. I can see like the 3 camera angles of your 3 states, and your face is changing expressions on each one. Right.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, yeah, but they were all named Dana. There was,
but they all serve different purposes.
Yep.
So fucking crazy, dude.
It was wild. Yeah.
That's for me, that's scary. For me, that's not glamorous.
It's
definitely a clip I'm going to put on the internet.
Yeah,
but
I don't. Happy to contribute to a reel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm talking about it from a fascination. This is what happened to me.
I mean, some people slip into that and never come back.
Yeah, and I'm not bragging about it.
Yeah,
I'm not. It's definitely not trying to make it glamorous.
That's schizophrenia, right?
I guess so, or at least a portion of it.
Multiple personality disorder.
It makes me appreciate how this happens to people, because I don't understand. I can sympathize with people with various aspects of mental illness, but it's a lot easier when you sort of glimpsed it for yourself to sort of like be like, whoa, okay, I could see how that could happen. And again, I just want to emphasize, like, I had like a red hot poker in my foot that was like searing pain is not the same kind of thing that most people would go through that would cause this sort of thing to happen.
Yeah.
But I feel like I tasted sort of like how that could happen, and not something I would like to do again.
Yeah.
It's not something I will seek out. That is for certain.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I just wanted to be done.
So take me through, let's get back onto the course.
Yeah.
Take me through, you go Flagstaff. How do you get to Rim Road?
So you're on Lake Mary Road. So you're on Lake Mary Road for a while, then you go behind Mormon Mountain for a little bit, following the Pinyons and Pines course. But Pinyons and Pines goes up and over Mormon Mountain. We stay around it, which is actually something I suggested for Craig. When I got over there, I was so regretting it. The last time I rode that road, it was great. I think it's Road 91 that takes you sort of out to Lake Mary Road south of Mormon Lake. It was covered in like freshly laid gravel
Oh yeah.
the whole way. And the last time I rode it, it wasn't like that at all. It was like you had to dodge sort of like holes in the road, but this was like awful, slow, and I was in so much pain, and it was hot, and it was, man, I was really regretting. I was like, why did I tell Craig to put this road in this thing? This is awful. And then I got Lake Mary Road, and then I was kind of, almost falling asleep once I got on pavement. It was like too mellow, and it was like middle of the day. But I was really questioning what the hell I was doing, really wondering how the heck I was going to make it. So you bomb down pavement past Happy Jack Ranger Station.
Okay, that's all pavement.
Pavement for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of falling asleep, and I decided like, okay, I need to lay down to take my shoe off, just reset, ponder what I was doing. There was part of me that right then I was thinking maybe I'll just continue straight instead of following the route and go spend the night at Happy Jack Lodge and just reset. And then I was like, I don't know, if I'm in this much pain now and I stop and sleep for a while, I'm actually going to be probably worse tomorrow. So like really, I think my only chance is to like just keep going or stop. But I did think for a while, like, maybe I'll just go stay at the lodge and try and reset. But I was worried that long stop was going to be really not going to actually help. This is going to slow me down and probably make things worse. So eventually bang a left and start heading east. I don't know what road it was. In my mind, it was going to be nice and smooth and fast. But as soon as I turned onto it, I realized like, oh, this is going to take a while too. So maybe I went like half a mile down that road and then just literally just rode off the road, plopped my bike out, pulled my sleeping bag out and laid down. And I probably laid there for maybe an hour. I think I slept a little bit, but mostly I was just laying there, taking my shoes off and just trying to think about what to do. I called Jen. We had like a 3 or 4 minute conversation about what I should do. And she told me she would support whatever decision I made, whether it was to keep going or to pull the plug or go a little bit and then pull the plug. So she gave me full support.
She gave you a non-answer?
She gave me a non-answer, yeah. But it also is probably
kidding.
exactly what I wanted to hear, knowing like, because I was kind of holding back telling her how much pain I was in because I didn't want her to worry.
Mm-hmm.
But I also knew that if I told her how bad I was and then talked to her in a moment of weakness, that she was probably going to just it was going to be too easy for her to say something to make me want to quit. And so I was kind of holding back for a while. But then when I called her, I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing out here. I'm not having fun anymore. I have no idea how I'm going to keep going. I'm just in so much pain. I just want to get it over with. And I really wanted to go ride the second half and enjoy it. Like that's what I was really looking forward to, was from Rim Road to the end. I was like so excited about that originally. So I said to her, I think I'm just going to try and keep going and see what happens. So I hung up. I laid there for a little while longer, and then I packed up my stuff and got going. And I had a little bit of reprieve. I think the next bit, I think I wasn't in that much pain from there all the way to Rim Road, which was really nice. It gave me a little bit of a reprieve. And honestly, I probably wasn't as in much pain, like level of pain wise from there to the end, even though my 3 personalities developed later, because I was in pain a lot, but the intense pain was probably at its peak just before that, just before I stopped. Then I got to Rim Road. Cruised along Rim Road. I think I don't remember when the sun went down.
Rim Road is graded right now.
It was pretty good.
Yeah. I remember it from Pinyons being graded.
Yeah.
There was like those pink things in the center.
Yeah, so I think they're going to pave it or something.
Yeah. Yeah, those things snuck up on me.
Yeah, because I was like,
whoa.
there was a little bit of washboard, but it was like the smoothest in the middle near where those pink rocks were. So I had to really
Yeah.
be careful. So the sun went down at some point along there. Maybe the sun went down on me as I was climbing out of Barbershop Canyon,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. Sunset on Rim
Yeah, because when
Road.
I hit Rim Road, I could see the light. So it must have been dark at that point. Oh, and the moon was out. That was freaking cool. I had
Oh,
like a full
yeah.
moon on Rim Road.
Full moon, UFO watching.
Yep. And so then
Rim
I had already decided at some point, I was going to sleep for 2.5 hours.
Were you still benchmarking at this point? Or you were just like against
I wasn't,
Dan and
at that point,
Dexter?
so I knew that I was probably still 2 to 3 hours up on Dirty Dan before I laid down and called Jen.
Okay.
So now I lost an hour. So
Mhm.
now it's like a little closer. And at that point, I didn't fucking care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, don't care. I did every once in a while turn my phone on, and I would have messages from people, and I would have updates about, oh, you're still 2 hours up, or you're 2.5 hours up. So I would get this information, and sometimes it would inspire me to keep my foot on the gas and keep going. But for the most part, I was just in like tunnel vision, just deal with the pain, get to the finish,
Mhm.
deal with the pain, get to the finish. So
Now, when you got off the bike, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
When you got off the bike and took these breaks, would the personality thing continue on, or would that kind of
Oh, good question.
the multiple personality thing? You would
Yeah,
remerge into one?
Yeah, my recollection is that they would fall asleep immediately. Aero bar Dana and stand up Dana would immediately go to sleep, and then me, middle Dana, who usually has trouble sleeping, would have trouble sleeping. So things would play out as typical. So I did get pretty good sleep for 2.5 hours somewhere along Rim Road before is that 260 it crosses?
I don't know. Did you bring a sleeping pad?
No.
You're not down with sleeping pads?
No, I am down with sleeping pads. I just was like, I'm gonna probably not sleep for very long, and I don't regret it. I was so tired, and everywhere I picked to lay down was totally fine with no sleeping pad.
Does the ground ever get really cold for you when you do that? Like,
if you lay there long enough, it's gonna get cold.
yeah, that never bothers you?
But for 2.5 hours, it was fine.
Especially with a quilt, right? You can kind of wrap yourself fully in it, or?
Well, we'll get there.
Okay.
So at the end, it was
Okay.
not sufficient.
Okay,
But
we'll get to
that.
that.
That 2.5 hours of sleep was pretty good. I put my timer on for 2.5. So 2.5 hours of sleeping, right? So that I didn't put the timer on until I actually got in my sleeping bag.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get out of my sleeping bag until the timer went off. So really, all said, it was probably like a 3-hour stop somewhere along Rim Road.
You set your phone timer and then you put it near your head or something? Is that?
I put the timer on for 2.5 hours and just put it in my shoe right next to my head.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I woke up like 10 minutes before it went off, and I just made myself lay there for another 10 minutes. And then, thankfully, it's pretty quick pickup. I just stuff it in my sleep bag, stick it in the tail fin.
Do you like roll it all up together?
I just stuff it in this. I don't roll it. I just stuff it in the stuff sack.
Yeah. 5-10 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Tops.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, even moving slowly.
This might be a small thing, but for me, that's a huge thing, is the efficiency of the setup and the breakdown, and not to put mental energy into like doing a bunch of stuff and having to stake a bunch of stuff out over and over again. It's just like, one more thing I got to do,
Yeah. So my system was pretty fast. And I think having swap space where I didn't have to fit perfectly was really nice. Like I could be a little sloppy and I was going to have plenty of room.
Yeah. Did you use your pillow on those times?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that helped. I mean, I don't regret bringing that at all. I'd bring a pillow over a sleeping pad any day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because if I don't have my comfortable head, I'm not going to sleep. And I'm a
psycho.
side sleeper, so I need to like have a little support. So then after that 2.5 hours, I shivered on the bike for a while because it was cold enough and, out of, kind of calorie depleted.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I'm still doing great. Every timer going off, I'm eating religiously. I've been really good about calories pretty much for the whole time until near the end. I'm still diligent about crushing calories. Timer goes off, I eat. Timer goes off, I eat.
This is the timer on your Garmin Solar Edge 1040.
Yep. So I had it set for every 30 minutes, and so I'm trying to
just a food one, calorie.
It's
one?
It's a eat timer.
Eat alert. Do you have a drink alert on there?
No, because I'm
solid on that.
I got behind on water later. But I was pretty good on water. I was peeing more often than I normally would. I don't pee that much. So
Do you kind of moderate your intake by how much you stop and have to pee?
No.
Okay.
No. I just drink as much as I think as I should be drinking.
Okay.
And to not run out.
Yeah.
Which I did.
Right.
I ran out to Baghdad. Actually, I went through my 5 liters to that 112 mile resupply, and I probably rode the last 45 minutes without water.
Did you have to filter anywhere, or was it all?
I filtered once, and I discovered my filter was broken.
Cool.
I got it working, and my Be-Free bag had a hole in it.
What was broken about the filter?
It was just clogged.
Oh.
And I swished it around, and I finally got it going, but it took me 3 times as long to filter a liter of water than I expected. And then I filtered that liter, and then I carried it to the end. I never actually drank it.
All right.
So yeah, so then it's nighttime. It's like 2 a.m, I guess, after that 2.5 hours sleep. And I finished the section of Rim Road I've done several times before. And then got a ride from there to Forest Lakes, and then from Forest Lakes to Sholo. And that is not enjoyable.
Okay.
At all. I don't even know how to describe it. It's the Rim Road through there. I mean, there's stretches of it that are good. For the most part, it's like Schnibbly Hill Road, quality road for 80 miles.
So C or D grade road.
Shit. And it's the craziest geology. It's all this smooth river rock.
Huh.
Embedded in the road. Like, you can't ride around it. Like, if you're trying to get your front tire around it, your back tire's hitting stuff. If you're trying to get your back tire around it, your front tire's hitting stuff. Like, there's sections where it's nice and smooth, but for the most part, it's pretty exhausting and slow going riding.
I just envisioned it, and I think most people do, like what you have at that first part of Rim Road.
Just keeps going.
Keeps going all the way to Sholo.
I knew that there was a section of it that was bad because people had talked about it, but I didn't realize how much of it was bad. I just kept thinking, oh, this is going to end soon, but it kind of just was off and on bad. And you're in the middle of nowhere. I didn't see anyone after Forest Lakes to Sholo. I didn't see a single human being in there. And there's not many offshoots road. And I was thinking, wow, if I get hurt back here or have a mechanical or something like that, it's going to take a long time for someone to come get me.
Yeah.
So and I'm sure that if I was fresher, and not that many hours into a ride, maybe that road wouldn't seem like as big of a deal. But at that point in time, my mental state, how many miles I had in my legs, like that pretty much just destroyed me. So that was mostly through the night. At one point I laid down, I got so tired, I just flopped my bike over and I laid down with my helmet on and slept for 20 minutes. I took another cat nap.
Yeah.
With the timer on, and then got up and kept going. And I think that was actually the last time I slept. Was that 20-minute cat nap? I think. And then got to Sholo and it was hot. Crushed McDonald's. Best meal ever.
Yeah.
So good. And then from there to the finish is really, really mostly enjoyable riding, despite the fact that I was still in wicked pain and the headwind was outrageous. It was maybe everybody had headwind there. I have no idea. But I was like, I could have easily done that stretch 2 hours faster without the wind. But it was really, really good. I will go back and ride that section again. I will never, ever ride this section of Rim Road from Forest Lakes to Sholo ever again in my life.
Bummer.
But from Sholo to the finish, or Vernon to the finish, last 100 miles or so good. Beautiful, beautiful terrain. Good roads, gorgeous scenery, so good. Water everywhere. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
The one interesting thing that happened is the sun, I made it further. So I really wanted to ride as much of that as I could in the daylight, and I was making good enough time that I was kind of like encouraged. I was like, well, I'm going to see most of what I want to see in the daylight, and I was really happy about that. So that was really encouraging. And I would made it further even than I sort of like thought I would, sort of like in my head as I was riding before it started getting dark. And there's the old Raz route crossed this bridge, and got to the finish faster than the way we went. But this bridge was out, and so we had to go up the Black River. And on the route, it looks like it goes up and then it comes down, at least south on the map, and then goes back up again. And in my mind, it was climb, descend, climb.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't look that closely at the profile, but I knew we went up. And because we turned around and came down another river thing, I figured we went down and then we'd go back up. But that climb up was pretty darn hard, but the sun went down on me there. And then that southern traversing part of the route was like up and down, up and down, up and down. And I think I was in a burn area, but I was like 8,000 feet, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's chilly. There's no one around, and it's up and down and up and down. And now the personalities are like fully there. Like that's like peak 3 personality Danas on that section. And I had to stop a couple times because I felt like I was in Groundhog's Day, and I was like, I swear I was just here. I swear that I just did this little hill.
Whoa.
And I was like worried that somehow I got turned around or made a loop or something like that, or my Garmin rerouted. And 3 times I stopped to like make sure that I wasn't like repeating something. Up and down, up and down, up and down. And then once that was over, I was like, okay, I'm more or less home free. I got to descend. And at that point I had to be really careful descending because I knew it was a pretty long descent and it was cold, that I had to be really careful. I put all my layers on. I had like windproof, Montbell layers over my gloves. I put my windproof socks on. I had my thermal wool tights, 2 jackets, a buff over my head. So everything on, but I still had to be careful descending that I didn't get too chilled. So I was like riding the brakes, trying to stay warm enough. And then I knew once we turned and started heading north, I said we, that it was a climb to the finish. And I knew that I was going to make it at that point. Climbing up the Blue River. And I do wish I would have seen that during the day, because it looked like there was some pretty cool cliffs and drop-offs, canyons into the creek, but I could only get a sense of it in the dark.
What were you using for lighting?
I used the Dynamo, the K-Light. Actually, man, my like lighting electronic systems was like perfect. Like I had everything dialed. Like when I was rotating the cache battery and charging things, like, and the lighting I had was like absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So no complaints there.
Was it on your handlebars or on your head?
The K-Light was on the handlebars from the Dynamo, and then I would, sometimes be charging the cache battery, which wasn't passed through, and then sometimes be charging my Garmin, and then I would use the cache battery to charge my headphones, which I didn't use as much as I thought I would, and my Garmin a couple times, and my phone, and my headlight on my helmet that I used to charge during the day.
Okay.
And I had a little mini Fenix thing that I don't remember which number it is, but Jesse turned me onto it, which worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And then I climbed to the finish, and I was like, oh, I think if I really hit the gas, I can break 68 hours. And so I was just like trying to break 68 hours. And I got there, 18 minutes to spare. It's windy. I see the New Mexico border. Garmin tells me, woo, makes that noise that you just finished your route.
Mm-hmm.
I flop my bike down. I'm freezing, even though I was just climbing up, and I immediately started like looking for wood to build a fire to try and warm my hands up because I couldn't feel my hands. And so I found enough wood, and I dug out a little pit of sand on the side of the road at the finish, and immediately started a fire and warmed my hands up, which was like a game changer. And then I got some more wood. So the finish is in the middle of nowhere. It's just at the New Mexico border on that Blue Canyon road. And Jen wasn't going to be able to pick me up until later that afternoon. So it's like 2 a.m. I finish.
Yeah.
And she was going to pick me up in the town of Alpine, which is 15 miles north of there. So the plan was to just flop down at the finish and sleep, and then ride to Alpine in the morning. And then Jen would get me later that afternoon. Given how I felt sleeping with my sleep system, the 2 nights that I slept a little bit, I wasn't that worried. But my Garmin said it was 29 and it was windy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I never know how the thermometers are in the Garmin.
Yeah.
Was it really 29? I don't know, but it was cold and I was out of calories. And after my fire went out, I shivered violently until the sun came up. I mean, like that for hours, and didn't sleep. And that really fucked me up.
Oh.
Not sleeping after all that effort and just sitting there shivering. I knew I wasn't going to die, but it was not comfortable, and at least my foot didn't hurt. So it was like a new kind of suffering, but I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm sure everybody was watching my dot and they saw that I finished, and they probably clapped and then turned their computer off. And then I sat there and promptly froze my ass off until, 6:00 in the morning. It was brutal not sleeping. Like, all I wanted to do was sleep, and I couldn't. I was like shivered violently that whole time. And then sun came up. I got on the bike, and all I had to do was ride to Alpine. And I had nothing left in the tank. I was empty. My hands hurt, my feet hurt, sitting on the saddle hurt, and I just had zero power. And I'd pedal a mile or two and then lay down in the sun for 5 to 20 minutes. And I'd get on and pedal a mile or two and then lay down for 5, 10, 20 minutes. And I don't mean pedal like a mile, like at a normal speed. Like, I was literally in my lowest gear, barely making it up this hill. And it took me 4.5 hours to go 14 miles. And then I got to Alpine, and I went to this diner, and I crushed all the food. That was an interesting experience because I was definitely the only person in there wearing spandex.
Yeah.
In the small town of Alpine.
Yeah.
And then Jen and I had rented a small cabin, like makes it sound better than it was, but it's like this row of, cabins.
Yeah.
And
Vacation.
so I was able
cabins.
to get into there, and then, stripped off all my clothes, got in the shower, and then slept. And then Jen got there, I think at like 7 p.m. that night. Then we hung out for a couple days. She did a few runs. We drove around the White Mountains of Arizona, which is pretty cool. And I just laid in the sun and tried to recover while she was out exercising.
Dude. Yeah, you texted me. You said the finish was a bit much.
Yeah.
I'll tell you later about it. So that was the
really
freeze.
put a dent, I think, into how I'm feeling post race. Like that, doing the race was a lot, and suffering through all the things that I did was a lot, but then not sleeping an additional night and shivering all night long, like that was too much.
Yeah.
I'd like to never do that again.
Yeah, I wish I could have at least had a back of a truck for you to sleep in, you know what I mean?
Nope, I was just there. I do have one regret. At some point in the middle of the night, a truck passed me and slammed on its brakes as it realized it, because I was like literally like my feet were hanging into the road.
Yeah.
And then it backed up and asked me if I was okay, and I said yes.
Yeah.
And I should have just said, can I get in your truck and drive me to Alpine? But I'm not sure what I would have done when I got there. It would have been 2,000 feet higher, and then I would have had no place to go. So it was probably fine. I don't know, laying there for
Yeah.
longer. But I could have gotten this truck for a little while and warmed up.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I definitely would have taken the ride if I were you.
I wasn't thinking clearly. And I didn't feel like I needed to be rescued. I mean, there's like a fine line. I didn't want.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
impede on other people by your own bad call.
Like, I put myself in that situation, and I just had to own it.
Right.
It wasn't like I was trying to be Mr. Tough Guy and have some story to brag about or whatever. I just didn't want to feel like I needed to be rescued or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was still in the depths of... No, I don't know if I was doing Pinyons at that point, finishing up the duties there. That was past that, I think.
You were done, because I think you sent me a text in the last day telling me everything's all wrapped up, so you're good. You don't have to worry about that. Which
Dude,
is
I would have come. Well,
I knew Jen was coming to get me, and I
thought you had this all arranged.
We did, because I sort of like thought, well, if I get close to Dexter's record, the original one, because that's when we made this plan.
Yeah,
it was going to be fine.
Yeah,
I would have finished, and it would have been morning, and she would have been just a few hours away, and I would have laid there in the sun or rode to Alpine. It would have been no big deal. But then I was like 15 hours faster, I guess. No, not 15. So Dirty Dan finished 10 hours faster than Dexter, and I was 3 hours faster. So 13 hours sort of faster than my original projected time when Jen and I made the plan.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild, because I would have definitely been there if I would have known. But it's just,
I appreciate that.
I thought
it was
had
classic,
it all on
right across the state of Arizona, set the FKT, and then 0 people are there at 2:00 in the morning, and then lay down and freeze your ass off. 0 glamour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all of the questioning compounds, because all you want is just a warm place to lay down when you're done with these things, because you kind of like your whole body dumps. And that, I wonder if it was actually that cold or if this was just like your body dumping. And
I think it was a combo. It was breezy, right? So you would ask me, like, does the air come underneath your quilt?
Yeah.
And normally I just like would tuck it under there, but it was breezy enough that it would find a way in there and like blow my quilt up. So I'd just get like all this cold air underneath there. So I think the combination of being just absolutely depleted and out of energy, and then the wind and the temperature. So that combination kind of just did me in.
Yeah. That's wild.
That's wild. I don't recommend it. I'd like to never shiver like that all night long.
Yeah.
I thought I've been cold before sleeping. That was like a new level.
Yeah. My coldest night sleeping was I did the Paria Canyon hike with my dad, and I was under geared. I was young and I didn't know what I was doing. And I brought a 40-degree bag, and it snowed on us and got below 30 the first 2 nights we were in there. And there's no people. Are you familiar with the canyon? Yeah, it's such a narrow slot canyon that it's even hard to get GPS signal.
Were you in the Buckskin at that point or Paria?
Paria. There's a spot, we put it in Utah, and then there's like a confluence where two areas come together, and it gets very, very narrow to the point where you can like almost touch the two sidewalls with your hiking poles. It's a very risky area to be in at the wrong time of year, especially with flash flooding. So we were very conscious of that. But you're in the water the whole time. Your feet are wet for 4 days. And it's like concrete. The water looks like concrete that's flowing.
Yes.
Because it's so thick with sand. So you can't even filter the water.
Right.
You have to filter from springs. So you're in water, but you can't have water. So it's a very precarious mental place to be in. And I had underpacked on the gear. And I the first night just like froze all night like that, shivered all night, right? To the point where like, and my dad has like 60 pounds of gear, all the right stuff. Like he had his shit dialed in, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Over prepared. And so like, I remember just like waking up, he got up earlier and I just like crawled into a sleeping bag so I could get like 5 to 10 minutes of just like warmth. You know what I mean? That was probably the coldest. And then the next night we found like a cave, sort of like not a cave, but like a carved out section on the side of a cliff. And we built a fire inside and kind of heated up the inside of it a little bit.
Yeah.
And use that. And what I would do is, I would heat up I had like waterproof socks, and I would heat those up, and also heat up water bottles, and then stick those in the bottom of the sleeping bag. You know what I mean? So, but the second night I kind of had a plan for not freezing my ass off, because there was nothing else we could do, you know? But that first night, man, I feel you on that. Just like shivering all night, so cold you can't sleep.
Yeah.
You feel like the world's ending.
At the last minute, I switched sleeping bags. So one of the times Jen and I did a canyon hike, I found a brand new Spark sleeping bag. And every time I bumped into somebody, I was like, did you drop a sleeping bag? Did you drop a sleeping bag? Did you drop a sleeping bag? Anyway, so I inherited a new Spark sleeping bag, and that was the one I was going to bring. Yeah. Was it going to be a little bit warmer, full sleeping bag? That would have been a lot nicer. So that's a regret I have. I was carrying, and the quilt's only a little bit lighter, pack's a little bit smaller, quite a bit smaller, but I had room. Yeah. I wish I would have brought the warmer full sleeping bag.
That's the Spark, the Phantom Spark.
I don't even know. I think there's a few different ones. I think it was a 20-degree bag.
Yeah. Because I have
my quilt is a 40.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good. I mean, it had to. So it's probably you said at around freezing that night.
That's what my Garmin said. Yeah. I literally have no idea how accurate that was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wish I would have brought a bit different sleeping bag, and then I didn't bring my puffy jacket. Looking at the forecast and how it was going to be, I was like, I'm not going to need this. I'm not going to lay down that much, and I've got the sleep system. I don't need the puffy, but I do wish I would have brought the puffy. There were several times descending where I was shivering and cold. When you're that depleted, upper 30s is a whole lot colder than riding upper 30s when you're fresh.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have brought my puffy.
Yeah.
So those are really the only two things I would do differently. in hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was, my nutrition, I think I had dialed. Probably could have used a little bit more water. Ran out a couple times. Carried a lot of extra water near the end. I just wasn't drinking as much. Yeah, really everything else was kind of perfect.
Yeah. Except for the washboards.
Yeah, I mean, but
stupid washboards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess riding it on a full suspension bike would be great.
Yeah.
For anybody who's thinking about doing this route, I've said it was very washboarded. It does showcase Arizona in a spectacular way. Literally, the last 100 miles is some of the best riding I've ever done in my life. The whole route, that section alone makes it worthwhile. It's just a great tour of all the things that Arizona has to offer.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it on a gravel bike. It's gravel roads, but anybody who's thinking about doing it, don't do it on a gravel bike. That's my recommendation.
Okay. Let's take a little break.
Let's do it.
All right. In Ride Across Arizona or Race Across Arizona, there's a supported class and an unsupported class.
That's correct.
Which is kind of cool because you can do a supported race and still have your time documented.
Right.
Which is kind of, I haven't seen that in very many other races.
That's how Craig and his wife, Minnie, they do a duo and supported, but they alternate who's riding. Like one of them's following in the truck while the other one's riding, and then they alternate.
Oh, yeah. So that makes it kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like you could make it not such a sufferfest.
I think it's kind of like you want to do it in a particular style.
Mm-hmm.
Then let's make a category for your style. Declare your style up front, adhere to the rules, and do it that way.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Right.
Yeah.
And in this kind of I'd gone to the media class also, like maybe you could create a media and a non-media class. I'm starting to seeing these because it's really democratic in a way. Like the race directors can kind of do whatever they want. Right. They can there's no central governing body on any of this stuff.
Right.
So.
If we want to do it a particular way for Pinyons and Pines, then we could do it that way.
Right. So I like that,
Yeah.
and the race directors do kind of look at each other and see what they're doing and what's worked and what hasn't worked. But, if you really feel that strongly as a person who's not a race director, you have the right to start your own race and set it up however you want. That's what's kind of cool about this, right?
Yep.
You can go out and do it on your own. There's nobody keeping anybody down on this,
right. Or do ITTs and declare your style.
Yeah. The one thing
I think is being open and honest about how you're doing something is what's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not trying to make it sound like all the different ways we do things are created equal, because they're not, but also measuring what's easier, what's harder, or how much of a benefit is it. I don't really know, and I don't care. Just declare your style and do it that way.
Yeah, totally. I was looking at, Blake was talking about, he was promoting Bones to Blue in Lake Tahoe and Truckee.
Yeah.
And, they have I forget what they call it, but it's like,
Forlorn.
Yeah. Forlorn. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool bringing that back. Blake and I were talking a bit about this, because Coco 250 had that style where you were I thought that's what the Forlorn was, where you were just timed between your stage stops. And so you had this really good camaraderie, but you also had this like great race atmosphere during the day, during the riding. It also kind of solves like the sleep problem, because you can kind of get enough sleep. And so, I don't know, I'd like to see that more. There's a couple things I thought about for Pinyons for next year that I was going to pass by you, and now's a good time.
Now's a great time.
Well, there were two ideas I had. One that, of course, taking from other people was like the sideshow that Meg does. I thought that's always an interesting idea, running it a week early and doing a way more like casual touring pace sort of thing. And then also there's the stage sort of idea. So, I'm
willing to do whatever. And ultimately people could kind of just self-impose their own style. Like if there's a bunch of people that want to ride the course in reverse, then they should do that. If they want to ride it by comparing themselves to a few other people that stop and sleep every night, then, I'm only going to time myself when I'm moving. Fine.
But if
it's not the same as the people who are moving the whole time, but yeah, why not?
But I don't know if people are going to go out and do that as much as if we provided a space for that.
It's hard to know exactly what people want, and I'm not sure everybody knows exactly what they want.
Yeah. So,
I'm open to everything.
So how's your recovery going so far? How many days has it been since you finished?
What's today?
I don't know, man. What year are we in?
I think
it's Memorial Day.
It's Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day. So it's the
so today's a
27th.
Monday.
Yeah, Monday.
I finished at 2 a.m. on Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 a.m. Thursday. And then we drove back Saturday afternoon.
So what's still hurting? What are you going to do?
My left foot is still swollen and hurts. It is improving, but that's without a doubt the most painful thing still on me. It hurts all the time. I feel like I have a lump in the bottom of my foot, but it's definitely feeling a little better. Pretty serious numbness in this hand and not at all in this one. I mean, I have a teeny tiny bit. This is a perpetual problem for me. Every time I do like a 2 or 3 day event, I have numb fingers, but normally they're like symmetric. I'm thinking that because I was constantly putting more weight on my right hand than my left to try and get weight off my wrist, that maybe that's why this one's worse, but it's pretty extreme. Takes forever to go away. It's like 6 months until the nerve regrows. So I'm gonna have to be careful not to, do any pretty big long rides anytime soon. Otherwise I'll set it back. Sorry, I'm burping up the Pellegrino and golden Oreos. So yeah, numb hand, kind of annoying, but not painful. My low back's a little grumpy. I have completely destroyed my undercarriage.
Yeah. You had mentioned off mic it was like like you got meat tenderized.
Yeah, hamburger. I think all the like washboard over and over and over again. So I just because I've had pretty serious problems with saddle sores in the past, when it was that painful, I just assumed that's probably sit bone tenderness, and then I just assumed I had some saddle sores, but it's not really. It's kind of just beat up and raw. So I don't know, that's going to take that feels better already, but it's not. It's going to take a couple weeks before it probably regrow some skin down there.
Yeah. I had, after Pinyons, I had like dryness.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't saddle sores. It was like friction, chapped.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way of describing it. And then like skin was actually like coming off.
Yep.
And I've had 3 people now tell me that the way is no chamois.
Okay, let's talk about this.
Okay.
I think here's the issue is that people who talk about no chamois have a certain skin sensitivity and ability to withstand maybe saddle sores. So as you've now experienced, there are 2 types of chafing or irritation you can get down there. You can get saddle sores, or you can get this chapped feeling. And some people have only ever had chapped. Some people have only ever had saddle sores.
Saddle sores are like a zit, right?
Yeah, and it is a staph infection. So it's staph bacteria. And some people have more of that bacteria naturally on their body than others. And I do. And have had issues with that. So you got to do whatever it takes. And that for some people with staph problems, that may be no chamois, but for other people, it might be a chamois. You just got to keep that shit clean and not irritated. So people who are proposing no chamois, that may not work for everybody. It just depends on what your level of bacteria is on your skin and how irritated it's going to get. And then for other people that are dealing with chafing issues with no saddle sores, which is a completely different phenomenon, then maybe no chamois works for them. But there's definitely no one size fits all. I mean, I don't even think my body is the same. Like I've been pretty militant about trying to make sure that I don't get saddle sores. Like the week leading up to VVR and the week leading up to RAS, I was using some pretty serious antibacterial soap to sort of get that bacteria down. And I think that's why I don't have saddle sores.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think also using some sort of antibacterial chamois cream, like the squirrel nut butter has tea tree oil in it.
Yeah.
So that keeps things down. I think that's going to go a long way. And then, no chamois. Are you dealing with washboards or no washboards, right? Like that repeated pounding. Some people might be able to put up with that and some people won't. So I just get really fired up when people just say, "Oh, you got to do no chamois." No, I don't think that's going to work for everybody.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'm not pushing chamois on everybody. I'm just saying you got to find out what works for you and also be flexible over time. You could have a period of your life where no chamois works great, but you might have a period of time where you got to be careful. Right now, for me, I use a pretty minimal chamois. So it's not a big, fat, thick pad.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to keep that shit clean and, minimize friction. And then you might get chafing and you might get saddle sores. And those, you could have both.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try it.
I think you should. I
Yeah.
don't think there's any reason not to try
Yeah.
it. I just don't necessarily think that because it works for everybody, it's going to work for you.
For sure. Yeah. There's no one size fits all, right? But like I've gone through a variety of things over time and I've gotten to a point and I'm ready to try something new.
Right.
And it's worth the $40 to buy the compression shorts to give those a try. I really feel like, because I don't really have the sore problem. I
Right.
have the chafing problem.
Right.
And particularly on events that have a lot more seated pedaling and not a lot of hike bikes. So like Pinyons, I had way worse chafing than Arizona Trail Race because there's so much hiking on Arizona Trail Race and you
Right.
get kind of a break.
Yep.
And Pinyons had so much riding and particularly seated riding.
Yep.
Because also it depends on your riding style too, right?
True. If you're single speeding, you're going to be standing a whole lot more.
Yeah. And so like that's just not an issue, right? And so
Right.
like Stremke, he's a single speeder and that might work for him, but I'm basically going to try what he's been doing, which is the Vuori compression shorts,
Okay.
and see how it goes. I'm not going to just jump into CTR without trying it out. I'm going to, as
Yeah.
Bodie says, check your shit.
Yeah, check your shit. So as a side note, Lululemon makes a pretty sweet pair of compression shorts.
Oh, really?
And they're super comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've got a phone pocket.
Oh, right. Dang. I forgot about the phone pocket.
Yeah.
I really love the phone pocket on the shorts I have now.
Yep. And then it's also got a little sort of pass-through pocket in the back. You can put like gels or food or whatever. I mean, I don't use that one, but so I use my Lululemon compression shorts a lot when hiking in the canyon, and they're great. And I did during my experiment with no chamois. I tried for a few months. Those are the shorts that I wore. And they've held together fantastic.
And when you did that, you got sores.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or sore sit bones.
Yeah.
I mean, also the saddle combo in your body makes a big difference. But I think that
Right.
for me, from talking to more than one dermatologist, it's really about sores is really a function of what is the colony of bacteria like on your body.
Right.
Like I get sores of all kinds on my body from years of wrestling and everything else. I've got all the shit growing on my body, and some people are going to be more prone to that than others.
Right. All right.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, but I feel like I'm a little bit more educated about it due to the things that I've had to deal with and talking to dermatologists about this.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like food is it's so individualized, and you just kind of have to throw spaghetti at the wall until it sticks for some people, right? You can at least listen to content and maybe it can point you in a direction or give you an idea of something you haven't thought about before.
Right.
But there's definitely like the process of this saddle, this seat, that seat. Do I drink soda? Do I do this? Do I?
Yeah, I think it definitely requires testing.
Yeah.
And I think,
Check your
it
shit.
could be dependent on temperature, right? Like you could be okay with no chamois in a certain temperature range and then not in other ranges. Certain saddles and not other saddles.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yep.
It's kind of the same thing that's been happening for grips and hand positions and stuff like that for me.
Yeah.
I thought I had the grip thing figured out but I got the bar ends and that really helped on Pinyons significantly.
I will say one of the big revelations for my wrist is these new Ergon grips, and I can't remember which ones they are. They're the big new giant ones, and they are not just a larger version of the usual winged Ergons. They are a different shape and different material and different flex, and they are amazing for me.
Do they have ends?
They do kind of have like little ends, but the way I have mine rotated to help my wrists, I can't really grab it in any meaningful way. So that position is useless for me. The way I have them might work for somebody else, but I was kind of looking forward to having that little mini bar end thing because it kind of does have like a sort of vertical sort of grip thing there, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
It's that little thumb catch on it and nice and flexible, gives me a nice support. That coupled with my flex handlebars has gone a long way for my wrist. So both my wrists have been bad. This one was great throughout the whole thing. Didn't really bother me at all, and it's still feeling really good. So I feel pretty blessed about that. This one aches. It's grumpy. Given how it felt during the event, I'm pretty darn happy with how it feels now.
Yeah.
I will say the one really positive thing that came out of this is I've been telling people for the last few months, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be a mountain biker regularly again.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think my wrist can handle that. And I say I want to get to the point where I could ride for a couple hours on the mountain bike and have that be okay. A couple times a week would be ideal, but I'm probably just not going to be able to do things like CTR again. But after doing this event and all the washboards and all the time I spent on my hands, maybe I could. Like, it didn't feel great, but like if I could do this, I could probably almost do anything. Like, washboards are way worse on my wrists than most trail riding. Downhill braking is not so great, and I didn't have to do a lot of that. But
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'm a little bit more optimistic than I was before. And even if I can't do what I used to do, I'm just going to have to deal with that.
Yeah. Well, dude, on the downhill braking thing, there's so much high quality, lightweight braking systems now.
I mean, I don't even care if they're lightweight. If I could just ride because the brakes were better, that'd be fine with me.
Yeah.
I don't give a
Like,
shit if it's 10,000 times heavier.
dude, my XTR 4 pistons with 180 mil rotors are incredible going down. Like,
it's not so much the full on squeezing. It's just the act of putting weight on my hands and pulling more weight into my wrists while trying to control compression bumps and that sort of thing. It's just really, there's a lot of sheer force on the wrists.
Yeah.
So it's not so much like the how much I have to squeeze as opposed to just having to squeeze it all. So,
Yeah.
but I would be willing to put heavy ass shit on there to make it work. It's better than not doing it at all.
Yeah. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say about Bones to Blue.
Oh yeah.
So, I was reading about the article because I was like, what is this naming? Where does this naming come from? What is the bones and what is the blue? What's the deal with this? And the blue is because you go around Lake Tahoe.
Right.
So it's very nice, and that's a very good feeling. The bones.
Yes.
Yeah. Is the Donner Party.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who cannibalized each other.
Yep. Totally.
And all died in that area.
Yep.
No idea.
Speaking of weird connections, I rode by on the Raz course, sort of near Sholo, where that guy was abducted by the aliens.
Oh, dude, Fire in the Sky?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That movie got me when I was, I don't know, maybe 9 years old. I watched that movie.
Yeah. So
Blew
I rode
my
right
mind.
through there. In the
That's
middle of
so
the night.
cool.
It was around the time that I was sort of becoming aware of my personalities.
Dude.
Yep.
But you didn't see any UFOs.
Didn't see any UFOs.
You were just...
Oh, but right around there, I almost got taken out by an elk.
An elk?
Yeah, so I'm riding along this like power line thing. I think paralleling 260. Did I say near Sholo? I meant Forest Lakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I see an elk run across the trail in front of me. And then like I see another one, but it's like far away. And then I like hear one behind me. And then there's like a bunch, and I'm like in the middle of it, and one literally just like huge, dude. It looked like an elk, but like as big as a horse, like literally right in front of my tire. Almost took me out. Yeah,
dude, I mean those things are 1,200, 1,400 pounds.
Yeah, so that woke me up. That was kind of nice to be woken up and not have anything bad happen. So that got me a little bit of adrenaline. So that was around, I think, within a couple miles of the UFO thing.
Whoa. Yeah, so that UFO story was the guys were out, like they were like loggers in outside of a town near Sholo. The name's escaping me right now. Small little town, and they went out, and the three of them had this experience. And then I think Rogan had the guy on his podcast who actually wasn't in it.
I can't remember his name. Craig sent me the name, but it's escaping me at the moment.
Yeah. Walton or something? Travis Walton, I think, maybe?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So anyway, there was like a couple brothers.
You need like a podcast producer who
I
can
know.
look up all these facts for you.
Yeah. So I had this idea. I just need the money. I was going to put a second tent next to this tent with a podcast producer over there, and they could like cue stuff up on the screen for us. You know?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Jamie, pull it up. You know, one of these days, dude, we'll get there. So become a member. Help me out. We'll get a podcast producer. Yeah, otherwise it's all going off memory, which is like a freaking struggle. But, so they saw this thing out there, like a craft, and then one of the guys got out of the truck and went up to it and was hit with like this beam of light. And then disappeared, and the other two brothers just like freaked out and took off and went back to town and like didn't tell anybody about it. And then like 2 days later, the guy wanders back into town naked,
right,
completely naked, and has this story that he got abducted. And when he told it on Rogan, he was saying that they accidentally burned him with some sort of like radioactive exhaust. And then they took him into the craft to heal him because they felt bad, or it was an unintentional side effect of them like taking off. So they like took him in and healed him, and then deposited him back into town.
Interesting.
At least that's kind of like his recollection after so many years.
Huh.
So who knows? But there's like more lightning strikes in that area,
right,
than in any place like in the country, in like all of the United States or something like that. There's all this like volcanic glass around there.
It's a weird area.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, that it's like smooth river rock up on these ridges. It's like, if you're a geologist, it's got to be just totally fascinating.
Yeah. So I was reading about the route, speaking of animals, and the route on the website, it says the lower areas have a high concentration of mountain lions, and at the higher elevations, they are joined by black bears and at least 14 different wolf packs near the blue primitive area.
Yep, that's
Be
where I
prepared.
finished. Yeah, so as you know, I'm terrified of mountain lions. So night riding is stressful for me, but I was so loopy and out of it and dealing with everything else. It didn't cross my mind all that much until I stopped and laid down. But I didn't spend too much time being afraid, less than usual.
Mm-hmm.
I did see one set of tracks in the sand. I don't remember where I was. It looked like mountain lion tracks, and I didn't stop to inspect. That's my best guess. Somewhere in the dark, night 2, rim road someplace. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they were bear. I'm not sure. I don't think they were bear. I'm pretty sure they were mountain lion. And I think I heard wolves howling when I was shivering at the finish. Maybe they were coyotes. I'd like to think they were wolves because I've got a fascination with wolves. I thought that would have just been really cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I probably would have shit my pants if they had like circled me, but
you would have had to pull out your inner Liam Neeson, dude.
I did leave one stick unburned in my little mini fire so I could like fight off something if I needed to. So that's like always something on my mind.
Oh my God. Is that what the be prepared part of this is?
I don't know. So it would have been pretty cool to see wolves, and I'm sure I would have been really scared if I'd seen them, but
fuck no, it wouldn't have been cool to see wolves.
I would have liked to have seen them, or hear them, and maybe I heard them off in the distance. Could have been coyotes. I don't know. I didn't see any bears. I saw not a lot of animals. I saw a bunch of blue jays, beautiful blue jays. I saw a bunch of rabbits, lots of rabbits, more rabbits than I've ever seen before in my life. Elk, deer, a couple owls,
Skunks,
no skunks,
raccoons.
didn't see any raccoons, lots of squirrels. Yeah, I'd say as wildlife goes. I doubled my count of rattlesnakes.
Oh, wow.
I'd only ever seen 2 together. When I did the ACT 300, I saw 2 tangled up near the low point on the Arizona Trail. You know where that low point sign is? Like within 100 yards of that thing. I saw two
Yeah.
rattlesnakes tangled together.
Courting
I guess so.
rattlesnake.
Those are the only two I've ever seen. I've heard other ones. And then
Uh-huh.
on this ride, I saw two a few miles apart. Between Baghdad and Seligman, I saw two rattlesnakes and
Yeah.
a few other snakes too, but I don't think they were rattlesnakes. One big ass motherfucker across the road. I was like looking at it. It was like perfectly straight. I'm like, oh, that's a stick. And I'm like, ooh, that's not a stick.
Yeah. Big one.
But not a rattlesnake as far as I
Maybe
can
like
tell.
a bull snake or
But
something.
who knows? It was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are snakes that, I think it's bull snakes that will hiss like a rattlesnake
Oh, make a
as a
mimic.
defense mechanism.
Interesting.
They mimic it. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I
They're
saw,
big.
two extra rattlesnakes. So doubled my rattlesnake count. Everyone was always amazed that I've lived here and been outside as much as I had and seen so few. So I've only ever seen 4 in my life.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Was there elk bugling or anything? Did you hear any of that?
I did hear elk bugling somewhere on Rim Road. When I laid down to sleep for that 2.5 hours, I heard elk bugling.
Yeah. That's one of the coolest things for people who aren't around elk.
Yeah.
Is it's just such a crazy,
Yep.
crazy sound. It's a very primitive, scary sound if you've never heard it.
Right.
You know? And coyotes can be scary sounding, intimidating sounding. If, they can be kind of, a little.
My buddy Bill's not a huge fan of coyotes,
Really?
but he's not afraid of mountain lions, but he is afraid of coyotes, and it's the opposite for me.
Yeah. There's a hybrid called a coy wolf that's a crossbreeding between a coyote and a wolf. And they are actually a viable species. So you know how a lot of species like mules, I think, or I forget what it is. Jesse will be so pissed if I mess this up.
Mule.
A mule is a non-viable crossbreeding between a donkey and a horse.
Correct.
Yeah. But it can't continue having babies.
Right.
But the coy wolf can, which is kind of an interesting thing because it's like the best of these both. Like the wolf is bigger, more predatory, and the coyote is just like the most resilient animal on the planet. Like survived all the poisoning of the turn of the century. They tried to basically wipe them off the map in like the 1900s, like poisoning everything they would eat, and all of the market hunting and everything, just to try to get rid of them. And they basically just like doubled and tripled in numbers, and now they're in every state.
Yeah.
They're like in like Central Park in New York.
Right.
It's wild. They're just like a super resilient animal. So you blend those two things together and
That's pretty cool.
you have maybe this possibly more formidable animal,
That's cool.
that's viable. Yeah. Okay. You want to do some rapid fire?
Sure. Let's
All
do
right,
it.
Cool. Rapid fire.
You'd think I'd remember what your rapid fire questions are, but I don't.
Good. No prep. Your favorite in-race food?
McDonald's. Breakfast sandwich of any kind.
If you had to put a McGriddle or a biscuit, which one?
My usual is the bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. But the best bang for your buck in terms of calories is the McGriddle. It's got more calories.
You're like 500 or something?
I don't even know, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's good.
The biscuit gets a little dry for me.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of depends. If I'm kind of parched, then I might go with the McGriddle. It goes down a little easier.
Yeah.
The easiest thing to eat, is without a doubt chicken McNuggets.
Yeah.
I don't love them though, but they're like, they're predictable.
Yeah, and they're portioned too, kind of. That's kind of nice.
Bite size, yeah.
Yeah, bite size.
You can take those on the go and eat them pretty easily while you're pedaling.
Yeah. What's your favorite post-race food?
Any kind of breakfast burrito. Like that's what I would be craving. That's what I wanted as soon as I could when I got to Alpine. In general, that's what I would go to. Pizza is also good. Pepperoni pizza.
On the breakfast burrito, do you go for like country style with potatoes?
I'm not too picky.
Eggs.
I don't want it to be too spicy, especially after like a 3-day effort. You kind of have like your throat's been destroyed. So I got to be careful not to do anything too spicy.
Yeah.
I don't mind spicy in general, but after a 3-day effort, like eating something spicy is kind of rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, some mild chorizo, some eggs, potato, cheese.
Dude, we're gonna have to go get that after this.
Sounds great.
I had on Pinyons at the Maverick, my favorite Maverick in the whole wide world, the most glorious place ever.
Cottonwood Maverick,
2 a.m. No, it was a little later than that. The sun was coming up. I was sitting with John Phelps.
Oh, I love John.
And his duo partner, Tom.
Yep.
And they were full zombie-ified. And I had just slept for 4 hours. 5, actually. 1 plus 4. And I descended down into Cottonwood, which, by the way, that was two people's least favorite parts of when I was gathering intel at the end. Number 1 was Sedona, and it was because of the people.
Yeah.
Everybody was very like frustrated at the people.
We always, that's just a quick side note. I historically in Pinyons and Pines, people always want Sedona in there. Like the people are like, oh, I wish we'd go through Sedona, but then I don't think people really realize what it's like to go through Sedona in the middle of a bikepacking race, especially on a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't always put that in there specifically for this reason.
Yeah. I think if I could redesign it, I would probably run it up through maybe Jerome in that spot. But it would add significant miles onto it.
Yeah.
I think we brought it in there this year because
we hadn't done it in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, originally people were like, oh yeah, cool. Single track in Sedona. But
people that went through Sedona at night loved it. Schnebly at night, they loved it. But I was there in the heart of the side by sides and the 5 bits of Jeeps. And there was did I tell you there was a cargo motorcycle guy that got stuck on Schnebly in front of me and this other Jeeper, and we got out and had to like lift his motorcycle up.
Oh man.
So he could like hit the throttle, and he was super embarrassed. He was like, I forgot how crazy this road was. It's been like 5 or 6 years since I've been here. He's like, has it always been this bad? And I'm like, yeah, yes. It's always this bad. It doesn't change. But anyway, at that Maverick, the second thing, the first part was Sedona. The second thing was that summit, you're coming down Mingus Mountain, and you can see Cottonwood right there. And you come up this little thing, and Cottonwood's right there. And it's just right there.
And you got to bang a left on the single
track.
track.
And left on blowout trails. And then it starts to get further away.
Yeah.
People were like, they were actively cursing both of our names, told me about it.
Designing routes is always really tricky. Like when you and I sit down, or when, we sit down to make these things, we're thinking about balancing dirt roads with single track. Where's the water? Where's the resupply, right? These things can't be too far apart from each other. And inevitably, if we had designed this route that sometimes always took the most direct line on dirt and avoided single track, the criticism later would be, and this has happened before, like, oh, why didn't you just take the single track right there? It's right there. Mm-hmm. But then when you take it, some people are like, oh, that was a bit much. I don't know if you're not on Facebook anymore, but at some point in time, someone had asked in the Facebook group, like, oh, it seems like there's a whole lot less single track on this year's route. Like, where's the single track? And so I gave like a mile by mile breakdown of where all the single track was. And right after that, I said, I'm pretty sure no one's going to complain that there wasn't enough single track. And sure enough, people afterwards said, yeah, that was plenty. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to sort of know what the right balance is. We could have used more of the blowout trails, but it's like, oh, it's right there. It's a beautiful trail system.
I loved it. I was ripping blowout trails.
But you knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Totally, so, but if you're like, oh, I'm almost there. Right. I'm going to be there in 20 minutes. And now it's like, oh no, it's an hour because I got to do a little bit of climbing on this road where I was just bombing this down. I mean, it's tricky.
Every time somebody said that to me, my grin just got bigger and bigger though. So
yeah, it is tricky. And then it also depends on like when you were there. Mm-hmm. Like, how were you feeling? How hot were you? And it was hot down there for you guys. I was worried about people at that point.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest cause of people dropping out this year was the heat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it was like I'd get a flurry of dropouts, like say 5 in a row at the hottest time of the day.
Yeah. Camp Verde. Yeah. And then, the Camp Verde was a big one. Pine, there was a fair amount of drops in Pine. Mm-hmm. Really, people got cooked on Fossil. Like, I was in the middle of the cook session.
Yep.
But I lingered at the McDonald's in Camp Verde for 2 hours just to
cool off,
just to wait out the heat. I was like, I'm going to wait till the sun goes down, till there's 30 minutes and it'll be behind the mountain. And I'm done with this. Right. It's not worth it to roast. And that was cool. It was a good call. But anyway, to close the loop on this whole thing, that Maverick, I had gotten sleep bomb down, and there was John and Tom, and they were like zombies. They hadn't slept in who knows how long, and they were like zombie. And I was like, "Oh, hey guys, what's up? High fives, yeah, let's go." And I got what was it? A biscuits and gravy burrito.
Like put in the microwave kind of thing.
They were all preheated. They have like
Ooh.
kind of like a preheated deli sort
so
of.
they're like the
thing.
hot bar.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, dude. And they had
Biscuits
a
and
biscuits
gravy.
and gravy burrito,
Mm.
and it was one of the greatest things I've ever had. Like, it was so good because it was like just moist enough. It wasn't dry. It was so good, dude. And then they were like, "All right, we're gonna go hang out at the bike shop for a couple hours," and it was like 4:00 in the morning. Like, okay, see you guys later.
Yeah.
So I lingered there for a little while, and then I passed by them at the Valley Verde Valley bike shop, and they're both just like sitting in chairs, asleep.
Yeah.
Just-
hey, shout out to Greg at Verde Valley Bicycle Company for allowing people to come through there, at any time during the day over a multi-day
Mm-hmm.
time period. I mean, because last year when we incorporated that in the route, it was kind of early on, and kind of people kind of came through
It was a flurry.
Yeah. After the rain and things like that. And then this year it was over multiple days.
Yeah.
So shout out to Greg and Verde Valley for supporting us and allowing people to crash back there and helping people out. I think, again, Greg drove to Camp Verde to pick up some parts for somebody. I'm not sure actually who that was, but
kind of a similar situation as last year with
pedal crank arm.
A crank arm broke off, and they didn't have it at the Camp Verde bike shop, so they got it from Verde Valley.
Sweet.
Yeah, from the Cottonwood bike shop.
Nice.
It was kind of a same scenario. Yeah. So thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. All right, continuing on here.
Yeah.
What's your spirit animal?
I'm gonna go with jackrabbit. I saw a lot of them out there. I just get so excited when I see them. I like talking to them. They sort of seem resilient, kind of surprising desert creatures that sort of thrive.
They're big.
Yeah.
They're bigger than you think.
They're huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big old ears.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm gonna go with jackrabbit.
Nice.
I think that's my current spirit animal.
I like it.
In the past, I would have said, mountain goat, because I like them. But I'm gonna go with jackrabbit.
Yeah. What's your endurance superpower?
I think I'm gonna have to go with just, sort of just keep on keeping on. Just put my head down and go. Just fortitude, I guess.
Yep. What's your worst crash or fall in your entire bicycling or running career?
The crash I regret the most is the one that I fell going like 1 mile an hour in Iceland with you.
Really?
And hurt my wrist. Because I just feel like that changed the trajectory of my life. And it's such a stupid thing. And I didn't fall in this one, and this one hurts now, so maybe that's not true, but I just feel like that's one I wish I could have avoided, and if I had just not tried to get back on my bike and start pedaling on that steep section, excuse me, I wouldn't have fallen. It wasn't a bad crash. I literally just fell over on my wrist on a loaded bike. So that one burns. That one hurts. When I was in college, I crashed, riding my mountain bike in Pennsylvania with no helmet on, broke my clavicle, and suffered a pretty serious head injury. I would say that I had borderline photographic memory prior to that, and then after that bike crash, had some pretty serious memory issues, which I now don't really suffer from on a day-to-day basis, but I kind of had to relearn how to store and process information after that. So that was a pretty serious head injury.
Did you go through scans and stuff?
No,
Not
none
at
of
that
that. I mean,
time.
I don't think that wasn't really on people's radar at the time. I don't think. Not the kind of awareness we have now. And I couldn't even tell you why I didn't have a helmet on. I was just out screwing around on a days off between working at a wrestling camp during the summer and crashed. Thankfully, my buddy Mike was there and drove me to the ER. So pretty serious head injury stuff. I mean, the analogy I always give to people is just like, Imagine you could picture what every room in a house looked like, but you couldn't remember how the rooms were arranged in the house. That's kind of like how my memory was. It was like I could have really focused memories about certain things, but I couldn't remember what order they came in or how they were related to each other. Like just things were kind of just disconnected after that. So that was the worst for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was just riding yesterday doing a gravel ride down Eldon and see people like pedaling up without their helmets on, just hooked to the side. I just don't get that whole thing. Like you can crash and fall and hit your head at any time, no matter how slow or fast you're going.
I mean, the first crash I mentioned, I was going like 1 mile an hour.
Yeah. And one moment and it could change your whole life. You could become a different person after that.
Yeah. It seems like I mean, you're not guaranteed certainly to protect your head with a helmet on, but you're going to increase your chances. And
yeah, I've wrecked and popped my helmet many times.
Yeah.
On a rock. And you know, if I didn't have it, it's just, I don't know. It's just, I don't get that whole thing, that whole like culture of being okay with on endurance rides too. I've seen people do it.
Yeah. I mean, I do respect people's personal choices about it. I mean, they're not necessarily putting anyone else in danger.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I wouldn't do it nowadays. And,
yeah. Would you ride in the back of a pickup truck?
I mean, I have. Would I now? I mean, it depends on who's driving. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been bailed out a couple times and ridden in the back of pickup trucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the same sort of thing though, right? Like
you're just asking for it.
Well, it's a free country, you know, it's Arizona. Like I respect that. It's a good point. Like people's rights, you're not endangering other people. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that used to be a thing we would do all the time. Dude.
Totally. Well, I mean, I think about road trips with my family. We'd drive to Florida. What would we do? We'd put the seats down, sleeping bag in the back, stack comic books and Etch-a-Sketch, and I'd lay down in the back seat the whole way.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah. Etch-a-Sketch.
Can't do that now.
It's pretty cool.
Who inspires you?
You know, the last few times I've seen the podcast and heard this question, I was always like, yeah, I don't know if anybody inspires me, but I have thought about this. So I guess I do have a pre-rehearsed answer, even though I forgot that this was going to be a question. When I see like older people out doing stuff, like sometimes I'll see older women out hiking with like weights and they're just like, I don't know, 80 or 90 years old and they're still out there kicking ass. Like those people inspire me.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit what anybody thinks. They're just out moving. They're having a good time outside and they're just still moving their bodies. And I see older people sometimes, you know, older guys walking down the street with a cane, still moving around. So yeah, I think just all the older people out there that are sort of kicking ass. And as I'm getting a little older, it sort of gives me a little inspiration to sort of like just try and be that old gray-haired guy, you know, out there still kicking ass.
Yeah.
So I love it. And what's weird is when I was younger, I felt very uncomfortable around older people. There's some circumstances surrounding this, but I didn't like talking to older people. I felt uncomfortable. And now is one of the very few things in my life that I regret, that I didn't find every single freaking older person in my life and pepper them with every single question I could think of. You just think about the vast amount of experience and knowledge all these people had.
Yeah.
And I didn't tap it. And I didn't necessarily have to agree with what they were saying, but like my grandfather living up in, you know, growing up in the border of France and Germany, like before World War II, and like my grandmother, and I mean, all these people that I had access to in my life, like what was life like? Like you didn't have electricity, you didn't have running water. Like, what did you think about the world? You know, what do you think about black people when all that was going on in the world? What do you think about gay people? And just like pepper them with the questions about their life and their experiences. Like, and I avoided it.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have just really just, you know, especially when you're a teenager, you think you know everything.
Yeah.
And fuck, I didn't know anything. And instead I should have just been trying to like extract all of that life experience and gain as much as I could from them.
Yeah. Yeah. Old people are scary when you're that age. They're kind of intimidating.
I guess I just wasn't comfortable around them.
Yeah. Same.
You know, I was worried they weren't going to be able to hear me or wouldn't understand. I mean, I don't know. All kinds of things.
Funny.
It's true. All these things that don't make sense to me now to to have been that uncomfortable around, but
Yeah.
I just was very insecure about that. Maybe it was because I think they'd probably just see me for who I really was. Right.
Yeah.
They're not going to put up with some bullshit from a young kid.
Dude, I grew up in a retirement community, right? So one of my first jobs when I was like 14 or 15 was to tutor old people on how to use computers.
Hell yeah, dude.
And it was like the biggest struggle to just get them to use a mouse, because they would like push the mouse forward when they'd click, and move it off of whatever they were clicking on.
Yeah.
And but I spent a lot of time. I worked at a restaurant that just serviced, at a golf course that just serviced in a retirement community old people. And I was gonna do this business. I had this idea for this business outside of college when I got into videography and stuff, to do a living will autobiography packages for people. So I would get a family member who wanted to capture their parents or whomever, grandparents, and do a video storytelling session with them. I think they've kind of done it like at the national level now with some people on like certain programs, but this was like more on the individual level. Like you could hire me and I'd put this package together for you, and I'd basically just interview you, and you would do tell whatever stories you want and capture them forever digitally, and then I would kind of like lay over like family photos and kind of like create and then chapter it out. This was when DVDs were a big thing, so then I'd like give people DVDs, and I did Jessica's grandparents. That was like as kind of the prototype, and I really liked the concept. It was there's a lot of like logistical work involved in it, trying to get family trees and trying to, because you have to learn this whole family each time. And it never really went into a full business, but I've kind of had these weird flashbacks to that as I've done the podcast, where I'm giving a few people opportunities to really maybe tell stories they've never told before, or document something forever that is important to them. And in the process, I've been humbled and learned a lot about those people too. And it's really like, that was one of the more fulfilling side effects of this podcast.
Yeah.
That I didn't think was going to happen. Right. Like there's a couple people that I've done the podcast with where I'm just like, that really feels very similar to what that idea was, that autobiography idea.
Yeah. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just,
So it's an interesting point, man.
I wish I could somehow, say the right thing to my kids to inspire them to, extract information and stories and knowledge and experience from all the older people in their lives, because those people aren't going to be around for them very much longer.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was a pretty big missed opportunity, and I didn't realize it until recently. Like, why didn't I take advantage of these people that I had around me?
Some people don't care to say though. Some people don't want to talk about their past.
That's true. And I guess I'd respect that too, just any aspect of that.
Some are very,
I do remember my, my grandfather on my mother's side was in World War II. He was with General Patton during World War II. And he didn't ever want to talk about the war. I didn't know that, but I remember laying on the floor in their kitchen at their small house. And I said, "Grandpa, did you ever kill anybody?" It was the only time I remember my grandfather being mad at me. He did not answer the question. I don't remember what he said, but I remember feeling very bad. Like that was not a question you should ask. I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I don't regret having asked that, because it was an experience that I learned from. Now looking back, like, oh yeah, I could see why that would not be an appropriate question. So that maybe stopped me from asking him further questions, but I'm sure I could have found a way to ask him questions so that he would be willing to share something about his experience, or what it was like to come home after being in the war, or anything like that.
Yeah.
Nobody talked about it. Probably would have been good for them to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. The world's a whole different place now.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the silent generation or something like that.
Yeah. Or even just like, his life as a line worker, he was like a telephone line guy. I mean, I could have talked to him about that. I didn't talk to him about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And he knew how to fix everything. Like, I didn't learn any of that from him. Like, why didn't I learn that stuff?
Yeah. I don't know.
I got a wicker chair in my house right now that needs rewickering. He knew how to do that. I should have learned that from him.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't pick up all these skills, but it's a regret.
Yeah.
It's not too late. I'm going to start peppering all the older people in my life.
All right, I got one down the street. Peter.
Let's go
he
talk
used
to Peter.
Crush Jessica on running races.
Nice.
Her only goal in life was to start to beat Peter, but we still see Peter up on Observatory Mesa. This was 10 years ago. He was in that now 10 years later. He's still up there hiking. You know, he's got his poles. Him and his wife.
You asked me who inspires me. It's these people. Yeah.
Yeah. I see him up there. I'm like, hey, Peter. He doesn't know who I am, but I know who he is because I'm like, dude, you're getting it.
Yeah.
Like you're like in your 80s now. So anyway, it's wild.
Yeah.
Favorite podcast?
You know, podcasting is kind of a new thing for me. I still kind of only listen to things in spurts. That's cliche, but I guess the one I've listened to the most is... Oh, stop. I was going to say Huberman Lab, but I actually now have an answer.
Okay.
Sorry. Martyr Made podcast.
Okay, yeah.
It's these in-depth sort of history-related podcasts. And the first one that I dug into is this whole series on the sort of Israel-Palestine conflict, starting from the 1800s up until the formation of the nation of Israel, current nation of Israel. I don't know, 30 hours worth of history stuff. And I think it's fairly unbiased. It's certainly, I would waffle back and forth between sort of feeling sorry for one group or the other or blaming one group or the other. It was really, really enlightening. And I sort of feel like if anybody wants to have a strong opinion about that conflict, they owe it to themselves to learn a lot more, you know. And I sort of feel like, you know, when students were protesting on campus, I should have been like, okay, first, before you have to protest, you should go spend 30 hours listening to this podcast or learning something just so you can really have the lay of the land about what things are really like. So that guy does an amazing job of sort of spelling out all these details about these various things. And so it's probably not the best resource, but I really enjoyed it. And I haven't listened to it in a couple weeks, but the current one I'm listening to is about oh my goodness, Jim Jones cult. Also super fascinating. Not as awesome as the Israel-Palestine conflict podcast, but that's probably my favorite podcast.
Nice.
Yeah. Daryl Cooper. I think it's kind of controversial, but from my perspective, knowing what I know, it seems pretty unbiased.
Yeah, the more information you have. I mean, you can't do
So
a prereq. I wish everybody prereq before they protested, but whatever.
Yeah,
that's.
I just feel like, you know, everybody just owes it to themselves to like learn as much as you can about what's going on. It doesn't make anybody more right or more wrong. I just do think it's useful to have perspective about what's happened historically and how that shapes people's behaviors.
Yeah. And like listen to debates. You know, if you can find debates on that sort of thing, like I find those very helpful.
Yeah, it tempered my perspective. I mean, my default reaction was, you know, probably pretty cliche.
Yeah.
And now I feel a lot differently.
Yeah. Being
more educated on the matter.
Yeah. I almost, when I go into these controversial topics or politics or any of this stuff, I almost just want to wait 5 years on everything.
Yeah.
Because if I just wait like 3 to 5 years, because new information is constantly presenting itself, right, on these things, especially like conflicts like this. We're not going to know everything for another 5 or 10 years or whatever. And then we'll start to there'll be information that was released that we didn't previously have because of like security or whatever, government security. There's all these topics I look backwards on and I say, like, why did I form an opinion at that point? I should have just stayed right in the middle. My new slogan is Mama, make America middle again.
Yes.
Make America middle again.
Yeah.
So just like be in the middle, be a little neutral. It's okay to be neutral. You don't have to pick a side. Like just absorb information. And then when you feel right about making an opinion, you know, you can have your opinion at that point. You know?
At the very least, be willing to change your mind based on information or rational thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. New information comes in, be okay with it.
Yeah.
Be okay with being flexible. Yeah, totally. With anything, right? Anything.
Totally.
Like anything.
Martyr Made podcast. Go learn some history.
Worst water source you've ever drank from?
The worst water source I almost drank from was that Beehive well on the AZT. I needed water during the AZT 300 and I was like, I'm going to get water there. And I rolled up there and literally almost vomited from the smell.
Really?
Oh, so bad. Have you drank from that?
It was amazing.
No, I could not. I literally needed the water and
Yeah.
I could not drink it.
Must have been a different scenario going on here. There was a giant tank with a pipe fed.
This was like a trough filled with water, I think. I might be wrong about that. It's beehive well, but it smelled so bad I could not drink it, even after filtering. I just couldn't do it.
Wow. It's a different scenario now. Yeah.
Couldn't drink it. So that was...
It was like an 8-foot high round tank.
I don't remember. It was
that
in
was
the dark.
like overflowing. I had to like go up into it to get the water out this year.
No.
Okay, different. You were probably at the lower section.
I have no idea, but it smelled so bad I could not drink it. I've never smelled water like that before in my life, and I prefer not to. So that was the worst water I almost drank. I'm pretty picky about my water.
You got Giardia once, yeah?
I've had Giardia a couple times.
Yeah,
that might be why.
Pro.
That's all I got.
Okay. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last rapid fire question. One piece of advice you'd give to a new endurance athlete.
Yeah. It's tricky given what I just went through. I think normally I would tell people to go find something that they're not sure they could do and then just go have a challenge and see what they're made of. And I guess I still stand by that. But I also think moderating that a little bit is probably so wise, because where people are willing, their first, what they think their cap is, it varies by person. And so if you think you're pretty conservative, then, find where that limit is and try and push beyond a little bit. But some people are not all that conservative. And so maybe they need to back it off a little bit. So I think being smart, thinking things through and assessing real danger from false danger is really important, right? Because we get afraid lots of times. That doesn't necessarily mean that we should be. There's plenty of times where we should be afraid and we're not, and sort of like have enough experiences where you could sort of like be able to differentiate real fear from false fear, real danger from false danger. And try and find a way to sort of thread that needle. Most of things in our lives are pretty comfortable, and I think it's valuable to go out there and have some sort of experience, especially with other people, to sort of have some shared experiences where you kind of push the envelope a little bit, but also don't be afraid to have enough experiences to where it's okay to throw the towel in every once in a while and learn from that too. All right. We don't have to push through everything.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's all I got for now, I guess.
All right.
I'm not sure I made the right choices out there, but they're the ones I made.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not going to ask you what you're doing next.
At the moment, nothing.
Yeah.
I have zero interest in riding my bicycle at the moment.
Yeah. But you got summer to chill out a little bit. Summer's a little quieter for you.
Way quieter.
As a professor.
Yep. I have some work to do, but it won't be 50, 60 hours a week. It'll be a lot more manageable, 20, 30 hours a week here and there, choosing when I want to be busy and when I'm not. I'm looking forward to maybe doing some backpacking with my wife.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, do some family stuff.
Yeah. I do want to do a few shout outs here if we have a moment.
Yeah.
Thank you for being my partner in crime on Pinyons and Pines. It makes it a whole lot easier. Like, life was crazy the last few weeks with Pinyons and Pines and my son graduating and the end of the semester and then trying to get ready for Raz, and having you by my side made things a lot more manageable. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
And I really got humbled by how much work you do on the end of these things. I didn't realize, because I kind of took over accounting for people and bringing people in the finish and all that. And I was like, because usually I'm out riding still.
Right.
And so it was just I was like, oh shit, man, Dana does a lot here. So I can't believe if he was on his own. So yeah, man.
Yeah, I kind of felt bad. It took me a little while to detach myself from Pinyons and Pines ending and my Raz is about to start. And for a little while I was still trying to manage going to my son's graduation party, get to the finish to catch people, and then try and still finish packing all my shit. And at some point I just was like, I need to cut and be done with Pinyons and Pines and say my role is over here.
Yeah.
And then focus on what I'm about to do. But
yeah, it worked out good. I brought in the last person there.
Great. So
I wanted to make sure everybody saw, everybody but a couple people that finished super late at night
Yeah.
I was able to be at the
So
finish.
thank you. It
You're
really
welcome.
took a lot of pressure off me, and it's been really enjoyable doing that with you the last couple of years. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's made it a lot more sustainable. I think it would have been a lot harder to maintain the enthusiasm and creativity and energy level if, we weren't doing it together. So
Awesome.
I'm really grateful for that. And I think I don't see any end in sight. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Cool, man. I think it's a lot more sustainable with 2 people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I really you've folded me in, you've brought me under your wing. Meg and I were talking about this because she kind of had the same thing with Brendan.
Mm-hmm.
You folded me in and have introduced me to all these people and allowed me to grow my network a little bit and gain a lot of confidence in that. And especially for this podcast too, it's really this evolution of my tribe and my community. And you were like the portal for all of that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really means a lot.
Yeah. So it's been a gift, I think, to be able to sort of be involved in this. And I don't know what, maybe not everybody loves Pinyons and Pines in the middle of it or afterwards, but I think, we pour a lot of time and energy into creating an experience that I think is enjoyable yet challenging, reasonable, and then mixing the route up every year. It's not like we're trying to take a thing that's great and polish it and make it perfect. It's like, oh, we're going to do this little different thing. And there's always going to be some hiccups in there, which I think adds to it.
Absolutely.
And I like that we mix it up every year, sort of do something different. And it keeps it fresh for us to try and go out and explore new things and figure things out. And it gives us an opportunity to sort of be creative. So I'm glad that went well this year. I also want to shout out Jesse for sort of driving my ass to the start and pampering me the day before. And when I got there and driving and getting chicken McNuggets for me and making me get barbecue sauce for them and dropping me off at the start and checking in on me every once in a while, that meant a lot. I got so many text messages and Instagram messages from people while I was out there that often made me cry, especially when I was just completely shattered. And so for everyone that sent me a message, thank you. It meant a lot to me. I tried to respond to all of them. I maybe didn't catch everybody, but they all meant a lot to me and came at different times. And sometimes some of them were very timely. Also want to thank my family for putting up with all my freaking training the last few months, especially my wife. She's had to, it's always busy in the spring semester. That's always a strain on our relationship. And then on top of that, our son graduating, and on top of that, my busy training. And so she's a rock star for putting up with that and being super supportive of my endeavors. I really, really appreciate that. So thanks.
Cool. Nice, man.
Yeah, dude.
Anything, Instagram, promote your Instagram handle?
I sort of post in spurts.
Okay.
But DC Ernst, DCERNST.
Cool.
And then of course we got the Pinyons and Pines.
Yep.
Verde Valley Randonnée.
Pinyons and Pines, Verde Valley Randonnée, both on Instagram and you have that all through your website, which kind of hosts everything.
Yeah. Oh, and thanks to Craig and Minnie for putting that route together and having the vision. I mean, it's not easy to try and thread a network of roads that are relatively safe from the California border to New Mexico. So that's a massive feat in and of itself. And they put a lot of time and energy into curating that route and all the other routes that they put out there. So thank you to Craig and Minnie for all their efforts on that, and really appreciative of that resource. And so if anybody's going to go do the route, enjoy it. I highly recommend you don't do it on a gravel bike.
Yeah. Good intel.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, congratulations.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing us through your journey.
Thanks.
And let's, I really do appreciate you coming on and making the time for this.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me be your first repeater.
I love it. I love it, man. Here's to many more, huh?
Let's do it.
I finally got a table to put our coffee.
That's
so
right.
We're good to go. Yeah.
That's good. We need 2 French presses next.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So, all right, cool. Let's get you out of here and let's go eat some more Oreos.
Sounds great.
All
Thanks,
right.
dude.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Dana.